Chapter 150, Coupling Part 2-2. Translator Strivon. Luo Nan's mood became indescribable in mere seconds. What Tian Si said was something close and personal to him, but the words in her speech, all of those names and concepts, were so unfamiliar to him. He felt as if he were in a dream. He strove his best to merge inside, but he was always lacking a bit of something. He could only strive to replay the memory just now, and he feared to miss a single word. But he awoke from this important dream, and it dissipated completely. Luo Nan waited, even though Tian Si had stopped talking. He still wished for her to continue. Then he subconsciously extended his hand, touching the protective glass that separated the viewing platform from the crystal pillar. The ice-cold sensation cleared his mind a little, and it ensured that Luo Nan didn't forget even an ounce of Tian Si's words. Perhaps it was because of Luo Nan's odd reaction that Tian Si became a bit puzzled. Junior Nan. Luo Nan really wanted to ask her, "Can you continue a bit more with that?" But the words changed when they left his mouth. It must have been 20 years since they've graduated, and Senior Sister Tian knows about this. Tian Si's gaze softened a bit, and she revealed a gentle smile. To say that the impression still ran deep after the passage of several years would be a lie. But by simply researching some data, many matters have come before my eyes. However, I have heard that a few old professors would use gear as an example of architectural philosophy and aesthetics when it comes to architectural design. Senior Sister Kingwen's name has always resounded. Luo Nan awkwardly laughed. Is that so? In comparison, I admire Senior Zhengheng even more. Although I am learning industrial design, Senior Zhengheng has a strong theoretical background. Many of his research theories have stood the test of time till this day. These include concepts, products, and design. Any of these can be easily used, saving quite a bit of effort. Tian Si had clearly studied the material with great detail. Every word that left her mouth had a basis to it. But the more she was like this, the more confused Luo Nan became. It was awkward. Luo Nan didn't even know how to respond. His hesitation caused a gap to appear in their conversation and in the atmosphere. This gave a certain someone a chance. Sisi. It was the young doctor, who had been observing from behind and to the side all this time. He quickly walked over, his movements revealing impatience. He stood in between Luo Nan and Tian Si without a trace of politeness, and he used his shoulder to block Luo Nan's line of sight. "Sissy, you've made it easy to find you." Luo Nan frowned, and his finger, which was pressed against the protective glass, bent a bit. He got a bad vibe, and he knew why Tian Si was avoiding this rather handsome young doctor, nearly like she feared him. Such temperament and behavior made his good looks a waste. So there was someone, this unreasonable, among the elites of the 5 schools. Luo Nan's mood turned terrible. He didn't want to be involved in this contrived matter. But the absolute majority of the words Tian Si had said just then were what he desperately wanted to hear, what he desperately wanted to memorize. Tian Si had said that she consulted a huge amount of information for the sake of her graduate project. She had to have more information. She must have a lot more in her stomach, but with the young doctor in the scene, it would be difficult for Luo Nan to continue this conversation. Luo Nan stared at the spine ahead of him, which was wrapped in a white coat, and took a deep breath. But this was not enough to settle his annoyance. President Ju. Tian Si held the drawing board with her arms folded in front of her chest. She took a small step back, and her body language showed that she felt very alienated. She didn't hide it at all. When compared to her usual smooth style, it looked like she had reached her limits. Unfortunately, President Ju was not conscious of this at all. Or maybe he was aware and just didn't care. He leaned forward to decrease the distance between him and Tian Si, and used the tone of a talk show host to say, "Sissy, the party is about to formally begin. I seriously invite you to pair up with me." Tian Si really couldn't bear it any longer. She took another step back, leaned to the side, and extended her arm out to Luo Nan. This forcefully shifted President Ju's attention. "Let me introduce you two. This is President Ju Maoxun of Cloud City School of Business's Elite Society. And this is my junior, Luo Nan." Ju Maoxun felt really displeased with the way Tian Si had reacted, and he extended his dislike to Luo Nan. All right. He was already in a bad mood since 2 minutes ago when he saw Luo Nan and Tian Si chatting delightfully. He long had schemes in mind. For him, it required no effort to bully the younger generation. He would correct this newcomer. While Ju Maoxun was deeply considering how he would give this newborn kid a deep memory, Tian Si did something that made him furious all of a sudden. This petite and beautiful girl walked straight around him to stand by Luo Nan's side. She even pulled the boy's arm. "Apologies, President Ju. I just promised Junior Nan that I would accompany him tonight. It hasn't been long since Junior Nan came to our school, and it's the first time he's taken part in this sort of activity. He really is lost about the whole thing." Halfway through, it seemed that Tian Si felt that her action of pulling his arm was too intimate. She relaxed her hand and patted Luo Nan on the shoulder. She was around 6 years older than Luo Nan, but she was shorter than Luo Nan by a head. Her patting was a bit humorous in the old-fashioned way. The feelings of a male and a female were irrelevant in this context. Tian Si's actions made Ju Maoxun reveal an expression that wavered between good and bad. He was unable to grasp Luo Nan's relationship with her. Naturally, he was angry that Tian Si rejected him, but if she was truly acting in consideration as a senior sister to a junior brother, he would cause trouble if he were to forcefully interfere. He would not be able to escape the shame. Oh, wait a minute. He saw the whole thing from beginning to end. He was there since Luo Nan and Tian Si met, but he never saw Tian Si receive any requests from Luo Nan. F***K. He was being played for a fool. Ju Maoxun's innate temperament was a harsh one. He was known as the Butcher at the Cloud City School of Business. This time he had dressed as a doctor in irony of his nickname. He had hesitated earlier because he was thinking about his course of action. He viewed the young lady Tian Si as a superior who was not to be trifled with, to a degree. But his fury raged at this moment, and he no longer gave a F***K. He took a fierce step forward as he habitually revealed his teeth in laughter. Flesh pulsated by the sides of his handsome cheeks, and he instantly appeared sinister and malevolent. At the same time, his hand moved like lightning to grab the collar of Luo Nan's white coat. Ju Maoxun was almost a head taller than Luo Nan, so the length of his arms and legs were longer. He just reached out, and the fledgling stood there stunned before him. Luo Nan had no reaction whatsoever. It would be too conspicuous of Ju Maoxun to throw Luo Nan by the collar as part of his threat, especially in public. Ju Maoxun was a person used to such matters. Though he had acted with power and ferocity, he just shook the edge of Luo Nan's collar and exerted a bit of force to make the inner side of the collar chafe against Luo Nan's neck. There was even a bit of rhythm to it. "So you're Junior Nan. To be dressed the same is also fate. Now we know each other, and I will remember you well. Don't worry, I have quite the good memory. I don't forget a face I've seen. Raise your head. Don't be a P*SSY. He viciously ordered Luo Nan to raise his face, and at the same time, he shot him a piercing and vicious gaze. This teaching from your senior is enough for you to enjoy for 10 years. You should be saying thanks again and agai. His tirade suddenly stopped. Luo Nan raised his face and locked gazes with Ju Maoxun. He looked at Ju Maoxun's pair of eyes. They turned from being fiendish to chaotic, and then from being chaotic to vacant. All these changes actually only happened in an instant. Luo Nan gently removed Ju Maoxun's frozen hand, while Ju Maoxun acted like a soulless puppet with rusted joints. Luo Nan frowned, exerted some force, and caused Ju Maoxun to stagger backward. Ju Maoxun instantly regained himself. His hand, which was extended before him, jerked back as if he had touched a poisonous snake, and it hit his own chest. The impact caused him to grunt and wake up a bit. He wanted to rage again, but he saw Luo Nan's eyes sweep over with a level gaze, and his mind shuddered. He gaped with his mouth, said not a word, turned around and walked off. When he got far enough away, Ju Maoxun's head became clearer. He turned around, wanting to head back, but he lacked the courage. He could only extend an arm and point at Luo Nan. In the end, he walked away fuming. Tian Si felt like she had watched a preposterous drama. She was unable to discern any logic from beginning to end. The coarse and troublesome Ju Maoxun, who seemed to be possessed by the devil, had inexplicably had his ferocity dispelled and had walked away with his tail between his legs. What did Luo Nan do? Tian Si was stupefied for a full 5 seconds before coming to herself. She hurriedly apologized to Luo Nan. Sorry, Junior Nan, just now Senior Sister is very popular. Luo Nan didn't want to diverge too far from the topic. He said a few polite words and stopped there. He hoped Tian Si would continue talking about the matters pertaining to his mother. It would still be good even if she included him, his father. But Tian Si's mood had been altered, having witnessed the interaction between Luo Nan and Ju Maoxun. Her eyes were downcast and lost for a moment. Then she looked at the shaking water within the crystal pillar, and she suddenly spoke with emotion. The scenery of the crystal pillar looks like a dream when seen from afar. But when one looks at it long enough, calling it a dream becomes an exaggeration. It's like a person. The view on the surface may appear unbounded, but it is really quite limited. Luo Nan didn't respond. He didn't hear anything about what he wanted to hear. He had no interest in Tian Si's situation and her mood. He just felt moody inside. He imitated Tian Si in an effort to calm himself. He watched the rippling water within the crystal pillar. His many days of cultivation had yet to form a link. Luo Nan's heart lantern of the eye's orifice had yet to reach a realm that can be called a small accomplishment, but his sight became much sharper. The swaying ocean water had its color restored from the blood by the time it reached the crystal wall, but it couldn't be considered particularly clear and clean. Fine impurities swam within, floating and undulating. Under careful examination, most of the ocean life had fallen to the bottom in pieces of body tissues and waste. Luo Nan's gaze extended out into the distance. He saw the shoal of fish mixed within the deep waters. The beautiful color of nature swayed tourists to take pictures as souvenirs. Not many people knew where the filth in the water originated from. Likely a sizable portion of filth came from the cruel hunt of the devil ray, the remaining traces of its slaughter. It looked dirty and messy, but there was a classic saying, "No fish can survive if the water is too clean." The ecosphere of the ocean revolved around this filth. Microorganisms, algae, and small fish and prawn were formed upon it. These individual links followed each other in succession to join head to tail and form a tight and necessary chain. If a link was missing, and there was no human intervention, the consequences would always be bad. Luo Nan sighed as he thought to this point. He vaguely sensed that this was rather similar to the problem he faced in cultivation. But by carefully studying his situation once more, his mind had split into two. Whatever he couldn't resolve made his mood even worse. Being upset, he no longer wanted to beat around the bush. He prepared to bluntly request this senior sister to say everything she knew. But then Tian Si found a new linking point from being emotionally moved. She suddenly spun her face toward Luo Nan, and her delicate and dainty facial features were rejuvenated with her usual smile. "Junior Nan, I don't know if you've heard this before, but there is one other structure that follows coupling design. Cloud City Water Village Building Complex and the Ocean Sky Cloud City we are in right now follow it the closest." Chapter 151, Eye of Heaven and Earth, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Tian Si pointed at the crystal pillar before them. She spoke gently. "The core design concept of Ocean Sky Cloud City comes from the facilitation of a close integration between an ocean system and a building system. Power, data, ecology, and various other elements all link up. This is an important portion of Senior Sister Kingwen's coupling design." Luo Nan's gaze cut across the crystal pillar. His mental senses were able to observe the complicated multi-story structure concretely, but what he could see confused him. He didn't know what to say. He just wanted to ask, "What is coupling design?" Tian Si didn't understand Luo Nan's currently troubled mind. Her smile grew increasingly more intimate the more she spoke. She drew her hands together and adopted a praying posture. "Junior Nan, let me take the liberty to ask you something. Does your family have any material left behind by these two seniors? I want to copy them for reference. Of course, I will pay extreme attention to intellectual property rights and the like." Luo Nan gaped. Right now his little bit of pride was completely insignificant in the face of his intense desire and craving for more information. He leaned over and stared at Tian Si. "Senior Sister Tian, my mother passed away early and my father left early as well. Practically none of their things were left at home." Tian Si gasped and said, "So it was like this. My apologies, I thought." Luo Nan interrupted her before she could finish speaking. He hurriedly said, "Senior Sister, can you give me a copy of the information you collected? I really need it. Really." Tian Si was enveloped by Luo Nan's gaze, and she suddenly understood how Ju Maoxun felt before. Under the deep blue light, Luo Nan's eyes were mottled with colors, but they possessed an indescribable pressure that penetrated her being. She felt as if her eyes and mind were being burned by raging flames, and it made her want to hastily close her eyes. Her heart rate shot up rapidly. As an officer of the Mutual Assistance Gathering, Tian Si had always been an expert in language and expression. But in this moment, as she faced Luo Nan's eyes, her verbal ability for logic and reason instantly perished to ash. Instead, the emotions that she successfully suppressed all this time tangled and weaved in her mind. She was stupefied for a time. It wasn't easy, but a single thought spawned in her mind. He's really like, yes, they're the same type of person. Luo Nan overlapped with that person's figure. Then, the image burst into flames. Tian Si's mind intensely shuddered, and she subconsciously took a step back. Senior Sister Tian. Luo Nan didn't quite understand Tian Si's reaction. Hold on a bit. Tian Si finally recomposed herself a little, but nervousness could be heard in her voice. Her throat was dry. She lowered her head. She didn't dare look into Luo Nan's eyes. She was afraid that she would lose her soul if she were to gaze too long. She fiddled with her wristband with her head lowered. She closed her eyes, adjusted her breathing, and tidied her emotions. 3 seconds passed before she started working with her wristband. She brought out the series of information she had saved. This was originally your parents' information. If Junior wants it, all you had to do was ask. Her speech passed through a logical frame and a sorted train of thought. Only after she spoke did Tian Si raise her head. She forced a smile and said, "I'll directly share what I've saved in the cloud with you. Most of the information comes from the school's electronic library. Some information needs a certain level of privileges. You probably don't have the privileges right now, but you should be granted them earlier than usual if you ask Head Zai." Luo Nan put his hands together and expressed his thanks over and over. "Thank you, Senior Sister Tian, thank you." From this, Tian Si knew that Luo Nan wasn't able to see through to the deeper things dwelling in her mind. She let out a breath of relief, and her mind became a bit livelier again. She brought up a diagram that Luo Nan was unable to access right now and projected it. But the interference of deep blue light was too great since the crystal pillar was too near. She used her drawing board as a shield to let Luo Nan be able to see the diagram clearly. And so, the area that became clearer was also limited. Luo Nan unconsciously came closer to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tian Si, their heads butted together as he watched with earnest. "This is the design proposal of Cloud City Water Village, submitted 82 years ago. Look here." The company's technical advisor is Pan Wen, Professor Pan. According to her, the purpose of the proposal was to lead a team in verifying Senior Sister Qingwen's theory. Unfortunately, it wasn't considered especially successful. It was even considered a mistake. Tian Si swiped the AR image, causing the 3D perspective drawing of Ocean Sky Cloud City's initial design to display various complicated structures. Professor Pan says that Ocean Sky Cloud City has too much of a craftsman's influence. Though it integrated an ocean system, it is just a show of the original theory. It's not a success in construction theory. It's far from gear, which seems to be made by heaven and has no trace of anything unnatural. Luo Nan listened with pride and sadness. He looked at the perspective drawing of Ocean Sky Cloud City and felt the same feeling as when he saw gear. Tian Si was able to read his emotions. She thought for a bit and began to act more gossipy. "I heard that Professor Pan specifically implemented a design because of this. One can see the wetlands of the school with a naked eye from the high-level viewing platform in Ocean Sky Cloud City. And this included gear on the north bank. The two structures mutually shine upon each other, one high and one low." "Really?" Luo Nan impatiently interrupted Tian Si before she could finish speaking. Tian Si didn't mind. She just said, "Cloud City Water Village is a group of buildings ascending in height in a ring. Aside from the main building, only Ocean Sky Cloud City faces the school. None of the other tall buildings block its line of sight, and the height and angle are just right." There should be some basis to her words. Luo Nan immediately asked, "What floor is the high-level viewing platform at?" "The 142nd floor. Does Junior want to go see?" Luo Nan nodded his head and spoke no more. He walked straight toward the closest elevator. Tian Si thought for a bit and followed him. Compared to Luo Nan's focused mind, her gaze flitted back and forth among the stream of people on this floor, searching for the target she had in mind. She didn't expect to not only be unable to find her target, but to clash with an enemy on a narrow road. She saw Ju Maoxun, who had left in a sorry state not long ago, walk over with large strides and a dark expression. By his side were a few characters with expressions of ill intent. He can't be thinking of starting a brawl at the party. It was hard for Tian Si to imagine such a scene, but it was also hard for her mind to escape fear. Just as she was looking for security, she had the misfortune of bumping gazes with Ju Maoxun from afar. Her mind went into a panic. The flesh of Ju Maoxun's cheeks pulsated as he gave a few words to the people beside him. Then he sped up his pace. Ding rang the bell, and the elevator door before Luo Nan opened up. Luo Nan walked in while Tian Si whispered, "Wait for me." She caught up in a few steps, and the drawing board she hung from her shoulder slid to her elbow. It swung, hitting the edge of the elevator. She said, gasping, "Hurry, Ju Maoxun." She had just begun speaking when an explosion blasted out on the floor. Tian Si shuddered as the lighting at the corner of her eyes changed. She instinctively turned her head, and she saw the portion of the crystal pillar that faced the elevator. A pitch-black shadow led an enormous current of water, and it smashed heavily toward the inner wall of the pillar. The sharp impact caused the crystal pillar to crack with a layer of fine white veins. The sound waves that rippled out shook people's hearts. It made people believe that this enormous crystal pillar had shattered from the impact. It was undoubtedly the mutated devil ray that had caused all of this. The attendees, who were observing the shoals of fish, cried out in alarm nearly in chorus. Such a scene was much more terrifying than the one before. The display of the devil ray was much wilder and more violent in that moment. It swam around the edges of the wall, and it slammed repeatedly against the inner crystal wall with its flat head. It was filled with restless emotions. With a body that large and an ample attack power, there was no one who dared to be near, even though there were clearly 2 layers of protection between them. They feared that this monster would break through the protective layer and eat people whole. Tian Si covered her mouth by instinct, cramming her scream back down her throat. The doors of the elevators immediately closed, while Luo Nan just glanced at the crystal pillar before looking downcast at his toes. It seemed that there was nothing else in this world that could arouse his interest. Ju Maoxun and his buddies had been aggressively walking over when the devil ray started its attack. They just so happened to be nearby, and thus they were given quite a scare. They followed the herd mentality and stopped to watch. It was Ju Maoxun who saw the elevator doors close in the distance. He shouted a few pressing words, and the group of people rushed in pursuit. However, the high-speed elevator was already making its way up by this time. "Keep an eye on the floor it stops at." Ju Maoxun made up his mind. He was going to give a lesson to the dog sh*t boy and girl in this building. He smacked the elevator's call button and summoned an elevator that ran parallel to the one Luo Nan and Tian Si were on. He cursed under his breath to vent some of his emotions, which were on the verge of exploding. Luckily, another high-speed elevator soon arrived. Ju Maoxun glanced at the floor number and took the lead in entering the elevator. The others came flooding in after him. It stopped on the 133rd floor and the 142nd floor. What's on the 133rd floor? I think it's an office area. 142nd. The high-level viewing platform. It's that one. Ju Maoxun quickly locked onto his target and ground his teeth. The elevator door closed, blocking off the cries and clamor of this floor. Only 2 seconds passed before a different bizarre sound came reverberating within this quiet space. The sound diffused into their ears. Ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. The tempo was monotonous, with no change to it whatsoever. It sounded like someone was moving a pair of old scissors back and forth. It didn't stop at all, and it made everyone fidgety. Whose ringtone is this? This was the first thing Ju Maoxun thought of. His companions all had expressions of bewilderment. Ju Maoxun finally discovered that there was a fresh new face among them. This fellow had come into the same elevator as them. Or maybe the fellow was already inside the elevator. His mind was focused on the dog sh*T boy and girl, so he didn't notice the stranger until now. This was a public location, after all. Such a thing was very normal. The person was dressed purely in black. He was wearing a suit and sunglasses. He dressed quite sharply. He looked like a bodyguard or a security agent in a TV show. He stood out in this party. But the most eye-catching thing of all about the sunglasses man was his tie. It was super gaudy, and under careful examination, all sorts of beetles dotted it. Perhaps it was because of the chrome color of his tie, but there existed a faint metal sheen to it under the lighting of the elevator. The compound eyes of the beetles flickered with the light, giving off a feeling of aberrance. The sunglasses man felt Ju Maoxun's attentive gaze and slightly tilted his head. His eyes should be looking right at him now. Ju Maoxun watched with stupefaction. He locked eyes with this eccentric fellow. The sunglasses man split his lips to let out a chuckle, revealing a mouth full of pitch-black teeth. There were even garish designs branded upon them. Ding! The elevator door opened, and Ju Maoxun and his group of people walked out. The elevator door then closed. The group of people stared around the entrance of the elevator, looking lost. Where are those two at? We're at 124th floor. We're on the wrong floor. Then why did we get off? Because... Ju Maoxun felt dazed. His mind was filled with the lustrous designs branded on those black teeth, the gaudy beetle tie, and the ka-chunk sound that rang by his ear for a time. If these various elements weaved together, it seemed that it was quite natural for them to occur. Chapter 151, Eye of Heaven and Earth, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. The elevator that Luo Nan rode made a stop at the 133rd floor. The other people got off there, leaving just him and Tian Si in the elevator. The floor number rapidly jumped up on the elevator display, and it seemed that the journey was to be a quiet one until Luo Nan suddenly opened his mouth. What kind of person is Professor Pan? Half of Tian Si's attention was still captured by the berserk devil ray, and the other half revolved around Ju Maoxun. A few seconds passed when she heard Luo Nan in her stupefaction, and only when the elevator stopped and the metal doors opened did she wake up to reality. Right as she was about to speak, Luo Nan already took the lead and walked out of the elevator. She could only hurriedly follow him. She was completely taken in by his rhythm, like a secretary accepting her boss's whims. Tian Si suppressed the odd feeling in her heart and said, "Professor Pan is the world's top expert in design theory. At least half of the reputation of our design school comes from her hands." Tian Si was quite clear on what Luo Nan truly cared about. She gave a slight pause, then continued speaking. When Senior Sister Kingwen was in the design school, she was personally taught by Professor Pan. I have asked a few teachers for guidance, and they all say that Professor Pan treated Senior Sister Kingwen like a daughter. She loved her that much. Outside of academics, she is a very kind old lady. She'll certainly be very happy if you pay her a visit. Luo Nan seriously said, I will certainly pay her a visit. That's good, I can help introduce you. Luo Nan didn't care how much thought was put into her words. He just carefully memorized Professor Pan's contact details. The two people made their way through the corridor and arrived at the viewing platform exposed to the sky. The elevation here reached 700 meters. The buildings of the Pingjiang district were generally shorter. Aside from Cloud City's main building behind it, open space sprawled wherever the eye could see. Tian Si said that one could see the wetland jungle of the school from here. It appeared to be true. Dusk arrived. The weather turned cold. The winds of high altitudes came roaring in. The protective glass at the edge of the viewing platform began to buzz. The sound of water rushed underneath the sound of the wind. The top of the central crystal pillar is on the 142nd floor. Tian Si pointed at the frame structure rising above the center of the viewing platform. The frame both supported and separated the water. The vast volume of water was nearly 50 meters in diameter, and it cut through the viewing platform. It jutted approximately 2 meters out, and it was surrounded by protective glass. This is the rather famous Heavenly Ocean Lake. It appears to be a portion of the crystal pillar, but they're actually separate structures. Reinforced glass separates them at the bottom of this lake, so it's just a swimming pool. The constructors made it themselves as a joke. The two needed to pass by the edge of the Heavenly Ocean Lake frame structure. Luo Nan just cast a glance at this joke and lost all interest. The current time was just before most salary workers got off work. The sky gradually darkened, and there weren't many people on the viewing platform. It looked a bit deserted. Luo Nan discerned the direction to travel and walked to the edge of the viewing platform. He cast his gaze toward the school. Indeed, he could see the wetland jungle of the school and gear clearly. He could also see the long river that weaved in and out of the forest. He could see the reflection of the setting sun coming in and coming out. Luo Nan was able to make an approximate guess on the location of gear from the outline of the jungle and the river. But with the gradual darkening of the sky and the distance of a dozen kilometers, the independent building was truly like a tiny part lost in the shadows of the boundless jungle. It was hard to find. Luo Nan wanted to put more effort into looking for gear. He believed that Tian Si wouldn't lie about such matters. He wanted to use his mental senses, but his mental clairvoyance, which had been always successful, seemed to not have the range of his vision under these circumstances. It's getting dark. Our vision is limited, but there are viewing scopes here. You should be able to use it to see gear. Tian Si pointed at a row of high viewing binoculars at the edge. These were meant to be used by tourists. Right now, there were just 3 people using them. Luo Nan walked ahead without saying a word. He moved closer to look through the binoculars and then stood straight. Tian Si cautiously observed him. No good. Luo Nan shook his head. The binoculars limited his field of vision, and all he saw was a repressed world. This was not the feeling he needed. He stood lost there for 7 seconds on the viewing platform before he suddenly spoke without warning. What is coupling design all about? He had an approximate understanding what coupling meant. It referred to the phenomenon of interaction and joint movement between various systems. But what did it concretely refer to in the context of his mother's architectural theory? Tian Si had to answer this question. She grew all the more cautious and careful, considering her wording over and over before speaking. It is a more unified theory within the design school, lying in the field of aesthetics and philosophy. It is a new interpretation of the classical Eastern philosophical concept of oneness of heaven and humanity. Practically speaking, it runs in the same vein as green construction like solar energy, hydraulic power, wind energy, and other natural resources. Luo Nan furrowed his brows into a frown. Tian Si immediately emphasized, "But in my opinion, Senior Sister Kingwen's core idea should inspire hope that an effective influence can be achieved upon grand natural systems through man-made orderly structures of buildings. And the level this sort of influence method involves is incomparable with the traditional meaning of green construction. In regard to this, Professor Pan possesses what is called an eye of heaven and earth in assessing. It is a mystery of mysteries." Tian Si had spoken very vaguely. She had yet to research coupling design thoroughly. She just cherry-picked good-sounding evaluations that other people made to appease Luo Nan, and nothing more. Luo Nan was well aware of her intentions. He pursed his lips but didn't respond. He had somewhat of an idea, but he wasn't certain. He also didn't want to tell Tian Si. This seemingly clear, yet not clear realization stimulated Luo Nan's heart. It made him itch to tear down that fuzzy wall around it. No matter the answer, it would possess incomparable value for Luo Nan. Luo Nan took a step forward, and the tip of his nose pressed into the inner wall of protective glass. He strove to look into the distance. Unfortunately, this tiny step was meaningless relative to the distance of a dozen kilometers that separated him from his target. All his eyes could see was still a mere general outline. Not a trace of gear could be seen. His eyes were dilated to their limits, and the precision of the resolution of his eyes were still lacking. As for the mental plane, he could only barely probe ahead in the void. The distance he could reach was far from what he needed. So it came to this: what his vision could see, what his mind could sense, two different realms, two different planes. He was unable to precisely locate the target. This put him in quite the tangle, making his mood a mess. Luo Nan hit the glass with his forehead. He wanted to calm his mood. Then some communications came through on his wristband, causing his wristband to vibrate. He wanted to cut it off, but he shot a glance at his wristband before doing so, and the name that entered his eyes shocked him. Zhang Yingying. Luo Nan had nearly forgotten that he had the number of one member of the society. Part of the reason was because he had no contact with this person for a long time. He heard that Zhang Yingying went behind closed door training in hopes of advancing her white rainbow by a level. At that moment, Luo Nan was really not in the mood to deal with Zhang Yingying. But Zhang Yingying had specifically changed channels to contact him during the maintenance period of the psychic wave network. He was afraid it was something urgent. In the end, he put the call through. Right when he was about to say hello, Zhang Yingying smacked him in the face with some words. "Where are you? Are you at school?" Luo Nan was stunned for a bit before replying, "What's going on? I'm not at school. I'm at Cloud City Water Village." "You're not? Excellent. Hold on. Cloud City Water Village, that's not too far." Zhang Yingying's tone rose in pitch. She urgently asked, "What about Xue Lei? Is he with you?" Though they were a bit far away from each other, Xue Lei could be considered with Luo Nan. Luo Nan grunted in affirmation. Zhang Yingying clearly let out a breath of relief. "What communications mode have you set up in your hexarea?" The secretary asked me for your communication number, but was unable to put a call through to you. In the end, she even wanted me to pass on her words. Do you ever make things easy for people? Luo Nan sweated a bit. He had set up the Hexuia's settings in accordance to He Yuan's proposal to have him concentrate on his cultivation. He set up the Hexuia in the limited communications mode. This made it so that only pre-recorded contacts could call him. He never thought that this would eventually complicate an issue. Zhang Yingying grumbled a few words, then she deliberately made her tone serious. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I'm passing the secretary's words to you. What's going on? Trouble's here. It's the investigation team from headquarters. I don't know what information they heard, but someone probably misled them. Right now, they fully believe with all their heart that you are a key player in the matter in Frost River reality, that you know a few secrets. They want to get some information from you. Interrogate you. Interrogation, they want to investigate me. Luo Nan's mood was already quite fretful. He heard all this and couldn't help but laugh. Where the heck did this come from? Headquarters always does things very bureaucratically. There's nothing to be surprised about. Zhang Yingying words turned disdainful. Then she snorted. Of course, these unreasonable requests have all been rejected by President Aoyang. But these people aren't finished with their evil intentions. They are using the high-level privileges they possess to manufacture a malfunction and force the psychic wave network into maintenance. And President Aoyang is just letting them cause trouble. Shut the hell up and listen to me. Time. We don't have the time, do you understand? You're a noob. You don't even have basic training done. If those elite interrogators get a hold of you, you might cough up everything because you don't understand what's going on. Luo Nan asked, baffled, hold on a minute. You're saying that they've already come looking for me? They're at the school. You don't say. Why else did we call you on the phone with burning urgency? Right this moment, headquarters has already spread people out, though there are probably reinforcements from our Xia City side. For those people, as long as they don't take your worthless life, it doesn't matter what excessive measures they take. No matter what repercussions could emerge afterwards, President Aoyang and our boss can't go so far as to kill them. They'll get off scot-free. Zhang Yingying spoke faster and faster. On the contrary, as long as you're under the protection of our branch, they won't dare to go at things without reservation. They'll avoid letting things go out of hand. Our branch is truly a complete mess from the loss of connectivity with the psychic wave network. We also don't know who can come support you first. Luckily, Xue Lei is there. That fellow's ability is worth placing trust in. So you should go find some place crowded, stay there with Xue Lei, and not move. No matter who finds you, you absolutely must not go with them if the secretary hasn't personally verified that it's okay. If they want to play hardball, let Xue Lei make his killing moves. All you guys need to do is hold out for at most half an hour, and things should be fine. Where's Xue Lei? Let me talk to him. I'll make some arrangements. He's somewhere on the phone. Luo Nan's. Zhang Yingying heard Luo Nan's insincerity at last. She suddenly exploded with rage. Is now the time to be playing around? Even if you're a kid who doesn't understand people, you've joined the society. Please think like an adult in considering problems, okay? We're not babysitting you to play house with you. You absolutely don't understand the methods of those bureaucrats from headquarters. You need to get to Xue Lei's side right now. Right now. Chapter 152, Activation Class, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. From what Luo Nan could remember, this was the first time Zhang Yingying was truly furious like a raging storm. He was used to her laughing and smiling all the time without a serious appearance at all. This sudden change was quite shocking. Luo Nan didn't blame Zhang Yingying for being this emotional. During the society's training, he chatted a lot with bamboo pole and paper cut. Any time the topic involved headquarters, none of them had practically anything good to say. Luo Nan found this very odd. How could such an organization retain people? Papercut gave him the answer. It was because of resources, power, less restrictions, and the like. But Papercut also admitted that all these benefits were as weak as a bubble during serious conflicts of interest. Bamboo Pole's answer was much more flowery. Not every city is like Xia City. Xia City certainly had an excellent and large environment, but it was no utopia that transcended worldliness. It could be influenced. Recently, the headquarters investigation team roaming in Xia City created an animosity like the one between a chicken and a dog. What was truly bizarre was the fact that headquarters was able to seize the chance to act with malicious intent, even under the cold processes and underground measures of vigilance arranged by the Xia City branch. Luo Nan was not prepared to argue with Zhang Yingying. He changed his train of thought while launching his own peculiar ways of connecting with people. He didn't give Xue Lei a call. Instead, he simply unleashed his mental senses. 50 or so floors separated him, who was at the viewing platform, from the party location, which was on the 88th floor. After he calculated, he figured that the distance ran a straight line that was less than a couple hundred meters. This was within the range of his mental senses. Luo Nan easily found Xue Lei on the floor where the party was being held. Then he gave off a subtle mental vibration, and Xue Lei's martial instincts were immediately on alert. Communication on the mental plane followed after that. Since the communication was unidirectional, and Xue Lei wasn't used to this method, Luo Nan didn't spend too much time going deep into detail. Xue Lei was able to tell just how serious the situation was, even though Luo Nan was notifying him via this method. He immediately said a few words to Xiu Shenyu, hung up the phone, and rushed to get to Luo Nan. At the same time, Zhang Yingying slapped her thigh because she didn't hear Luo Nan immediately respond to her. Do you understand what I'm talking about at all? I already notified Xue Lei. He's heading up here right now. You can give him a call and get in contact with him. Zhang Yingying was stunned for a moment. Then she recollected her meaningless emotions in the blink of an eye and asked, "How many floors away is he?" "Forget it. I'll just ask him. Also, your mental senses should be activated right now, right? You have a sensing range of 80 meters. That should be enough. Remember, this is a matter of life and death. You must hold on no matter what. You have to keep your eye out for any suspicious targets. Don't hang up. I'll open parallel communications." Luo Nan grunted in acknowledgement as he heard the quick exchange between Zhang Yingying and Xue Lei in his ear, and as his mental senses noiselessly covered a vast area of a kilometer in radius. The lustrous landscape of the Star River unfurled in his mind. It covered nearly 170 floors, from the underground space of Ocean Sky Cloud City and up. The life sketches of tens of thousands of living beings lit layer by layer, formed from stars and filling the sky. They were numerous and close together. In truth, most of these life sketches could be ignored. Luo Nan just combed through the areas where his mental senses could not penetrate. The answer came quickly, and was beyond his expectations. It was the high-speed elevator he was just on, the elevator next to it. There spiraled a mass of hazy, dark mist. A few stars flickered in and out of sight. Right now, the suspicious elevator had already reached the 130th floor, the office area of some multinational company. Some people had called for the elevator, hence the temporary stop. But soon, the elevator resumed moving upward. Luo Nan sighed, "Not good." Zhang Yingying immediately asked, "What happened?" "Actually, there's someone heading up here, someone with unknown strength. Avoid him, employ your advantage in sensing. Don't face him head on. If the enemy also has a sensing ability and you can't shake him off, then go inside a crowd. Don't give those guys a chance to make a move." Luo Nan looked around the viewing platform, and his lips upturned into a silent, wry grin. At present, very few people loitered on the viewing platform. The so-called crowd didn't exist. Even if it did, Luo Nan was absolutely unwilling to use innocent people as shields. In the end, he casted his gaze up at the darkening sky. No matter what would happen today, it would be hard to unearth any new secrets of gear. Speaking of which, it seemed that he didn't inherit an intuitive instinct in his blood. He was unqualified to be his parents' son. Wasn't that right? The completely unreasonable thought churned the emotions in his heart a few times. He smacked the protective glass hard, giving Tian Si quite a surprise. "Junior." Luo Nan didn't explain what was on his mind to her. He simply said, "We're going." Tian Si was stunned. Luo Nan was acting very strangely right then, but she was clever and knew wiser than to say anything. She gave a faint grunt and adopted the submissive attitude of a retainer following a lord. Zhang Yingying also found things strange on her end. "You're leading someone who?" Luo Nan didn't answer. He led Tian Si toward the elevator area with large strides. Taking into account the speed of the elevator, he had a chance to break away from the unidentified fellow. But he only walked halfway there, when new elements appeared within the range of his mental senses. Luo Nan suddenly stopped walking. His mental senses were focused inside the crystal pillar. This enormous pillar was 120 meters in diameter. It housed thousands upon thousands of species of marine life, but 99% were muddled and hazy in his mental senses. Their life sketches were scattered and could simply be ignored. The sole exception was the Devil Ray. It was a mutant with a powerful and dense aura, and it didn't really know how to conceal itself. Most of its life sketch revealed itself outside nebulae. It was very eye-catching, standing above the crowd. Because of this, Luo Nan suddenly discovered that this huge fellow had broken away from the middle depths region of water it liked to stay in. It was advancing straight up, moving even faster than the high-speed elevator. Originally, the monster fish was located around 30 floors below the undercover suspicious character. But by the time Luo Nan unleashed his mental clairvoyance, the monster fish's height broke the 130th floor in the blink of an eye. Its speed wasn't slowing down at all. Luo Nan was more vigilant towards something else, though. Next to this large fellow was another mass of hazy dark mist excellently concealing something. If it were not for the brightness of the monster fish's life sketch, occasionally revealing that something's extraordinariness, Luo Nan would have truly neglected it. This was not some marine being, it was a living person. This couldn't be good. Luo Nan immediately changed directions and urgently asked, "Are there elevators that don't pass through Heavenly Ocean Lake?" There were 60 high-speed elevators in Ocean Sky Cloud City. It was a complicated structure, Luo Nan's Star River image wasn't particularly apt at discerning inanimate objects. Luo Nan was desperate, so he had asked. Tian Si's response was worthy of praise. She had done her homework ahead of time, and it showed. She instantly pointed to the west side of the viewing platform. The row of them there all are. Walk faster, we'll split once we get there. Tian Si practically went into a small jog from being urged on by Luo Nan. She was a bit out of breath. Did Ju Maoxun and his gang come up here? Sorry, I was just... It has nothing to do with you. Luo Nan had Tian Si eat her words. Wow, you're quite the show off. If you have the mood to talk, you have the mood to walk, okay? Zhang Yingying pressured him through the call, mocking him. Truth was, she was angry to the point of stomping. Don't pretend as if you don't have the skills. Xue Lei, faster. Xue Lei's hurried voice could be heard. I'm coming from the outside. Luo Nan provided new information with revised positions of him and the enemy. I reached the west side of the building. I will provide updates at any given time. One enemy is in the central elevator. The other is in the crystal pillar. While speaking, Luo Nan took out a thumb-sized bottle from his pocket. He unscrewed the cap with a single hand, shook it, and threw it behind him. The bottle fell to the ground. It sounded like it was empty. Tian Si was completely lost. She didn't understand what Luo Nan was doing at all. However, Luo Nan spoke over the phone with a tone that was full of the flavor of crisis that soldiers faced before a vicious battle. Luo Nan's voice stabbed into her, causing her to break out in cold sweat. In the end, Tian Si was an intelligent person who valued her life. She didn't speak, but she secretly opened the communication function of her wristband. She hesitated for half a second as she decided who she should contact before making up her mind. However, there was no response with the communications. Tian Si's brain was struck dumb. She walked with a lost mind and didn't look where she was going. Her high heels didn't land correctly on the steps going down the platform, and she staggered. Luckily, Luo Nan caught her. Luo Nan extended a helping hand, but his feet didn't stop moving in the slightest. He half-dragged Tian Si as they walked forward. In such circumstances, even if he didn't utter a word, the pressing feeling of danger felt like being wrapped in a thundering rain cloud. It loomed heavy and oppressive, terrifying to one's soul. Tian Si's face went pale. She spoke not a word as she dimly walked 7 steps. Only then did she break free from Luo Nan's support. Her hand grabbed her drawing board deathly tight with a white-knuckled grip. The two people walked in this manner toward the west side elevator area and encountered quite a coincidence. Luo Nan didn't even press the elevator button, and an elevator just so happened to arrive. The bell rang with a ding, and the metal doors opened. Currently, Tian Si's mind was just blank. She simply followed her instinct as she walked forward, but Luo Nan yanked her back. She immediately lost her balance, and her petite figure fell backward onto Luo Nan's shoulder, pushing them both further away from the elevator. Tian Si gave a faint gasp as the drawing board slipped through her fingers and fell to the ground. The drawing board got stepped on by both Tian Si and Luo Nan as they moved backward. Let alone being dirtied, the drawing board was now cracked. But at this moment, Tian Si was already unable to deal with these details. A man slowly walked out after the elevator doors opened. He wore a security uniform, and he wielded a police baton in his hand. The electrical switch was already flipped on, and the baton pulsated with the sound of crackling. This new type of police baton had an electric whip effect. Sparks could be seen flashing around it. From Tian Si's perspective, The jumping electric arcs truly possessed an enormous deterring might. He was a security officer. Why wasn't she asking for help? It was because of this man's face. It made her blood run cold from his strange look, dilated pupils, stiff flesh, the snot and tears that ran down. Everything of him looked filled to the brim with terror. But the corner of the man's mouth split and twitched upward. If one were to just look at this portion, it looked like the man was grinning. This face had been forcefully jammed with completely opposite emotions. From Tian Si's perspective, this scene was far more horrifying than the devil fish ramming into the crystal pillar a moment ago. The electric baton was real, to say the least. "He's gone mad," Tian Si murmured. Her voice fell, and a devilish chuckle bubbled from the mad security officer's throat. The man lunged with great force. He charged over, waving the electric baton. Tian Si let out a gasp of a cry, and she shrank behind Luo Nan. Right after she hid within Luo Nan's shadow, she heard the muffled sound of something heavy smashing to the ground. Then, a clattering, rolling sound. Luo Nan's body stood firm, moving not an inch and blocking the space ahead. As Tian Si did her best to calm her breathing, she dimly heard Luo Nan mutter, "So there is a way to distort consciousness. How fortunate." Chapter 152, Activation Class, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Tian Si couldn't understand what Luo Nan was saying at all. She just saw the mad security guard fall face first to the ground. The police baton fell from the man's hand, and it rolled to their feet. She instinctively wanted to pick up the baton and use it to protect herself. She bent over, but Luo Nan kicked the baton away. "Don't waste time. You take this elevator and go first." Luo Nan urged Tian Si to move faster. Tian Si hesitated slightly, but came out from behind Luo Nan. She was heading right toward the elevator when another ding rang out. A second elevator arrived, and its position was right next to the previous one. Tian Si walked a step forward, leading Luo Nan by half a body. She then raised her head and saw the previous scene, but with twice the amount of people. Two security officers wore the same expressions as they came out of the elevator. One of them even wielded a riot gun. Tian Si stared into the pitch-black muzzle of the gun. Her vermilion lips spread open, but she was unable to utter a sound. Fear was strangling her throat, and this time she didn't have the chance to hide. But because of this, the scene was projected clearly into her pupils, which were dilated from fear. The two mad security officers' eyes rolled white, and they fell to the ground. She made not a sound over the entire course of events. It was as if she turned mute. The people atop the viewing platform had yet to be aware of what happened, but the more things transpired like this, the more the elements of strangeness and mystery seeped into the bottom of her heart. Tian Si unconsciously covered her mouth with her hand. Her ice-cold palm felt a bit of warmth from her breath. This allowed her to confirm that she still lived in the world of reality. But why? Why was she suddenly thrust into this level of conflict? Luo Nan didn't have the leisure to ponder the thoughts of a woman. At that point in time, Tian Si became still, unable to move. Luo Nan gave her a light push and said, "Go." Tian Si chewed on her lip as she nervously strode 2 steps forth. But something happened at this moment. She heard the faint sound of the elevator suddenly stopping, and the entire row of elevators' display screens lost their lights. The power had been cut off. The metal doors automatically closed, blocking Tian Si outside. Whether it was Tian Si or Luo Nan, both were instantly shocked. Then Luo Nan smiled a mere half a second later. It can't be discerned whether or not he was laughing. The enemy is certainly prepared. His voice hung in the air, and a heavy vibration came passing over. The ground beneath their feet shook slightly. They clearly felt a tremor. Earthquake. This was the first thought that came to Tian Si's mind. Xia City had already endured over a month of earthquakes. But then a second wave of vibration followed closely after. With it came the roaring sound of water, which was clearly coming from the direction of the heavenly ocean lake. The few tourists on the viewing platform were completely astonished. Some people stuck their heads toward the heavenly ocean lake. Some even walked over. Tian Si looked that way as well, but she was pulled away by Luo Nan. Let's go to the fire escape passageway. Luo Nan no longer placed concern upon the failed elevators. He quickly decided a direction, walked briskly a few steps, and grabbed the confused Tian Si behind him. He wanted her to follow him. In a daze, Tian Si followed him for a few steps and stepped over one of the collapsed bodies of the mad security officers. This time she didn't stumble, but she was stimulated instead. After all, when things reach an extreme, they could only move in the opposite direction. Her mind became much clearer. She thought of something, stopped moving, and bent over to pick up the riot gun on the ground. Clang, clang. A foot came streaking across. It brushed against Tian Si's fingertips and kicked the riot gun several meters away. Tian Si's heart instantly throbbed. All her complicated and chaotic emotions were stuffed in there to the point of exploding. She suddenly stood up and faced Luo Nan with a courage that came out of who knew where. She shouted, but she still subconsciously suppressed her voice. "I need a weapon to defend myself, okay?" Luo Nan simply said, "I'm not using it, and you can't use it either." Based on what? I recently took a course that covered situations similar to the one we're in now. Non-combatants shouldn't wield deadly weapons. If they do, the first to be harmed would likely be me. Tian Si knew that she shouldn't get angry, but she couldn't stand having her dignity trampled on. She raised her voice. "I've taken military training before. I won't hurt you by accident. Or are you saying that you're worried that I'll shoot you in the back when you're not looking?" With the enemy possessing some kind of control ability, there is always the chance. Having said this, Luo Nan slightly raised his wrist. He asked through the wristband opened in communications. The enemy can control normal people, and the controller can have his victims move however he wants. The victims possess strange emotions. What sort of ability is this? Zhang Yingying instantly responded with the user of this ability. It's Puppeteer. He's a member of the investigation team. He's a master in advanced hypnosis. He has the ability to control living beings with complicated minds. Aside from people, he can control higher intelligent beasts or mutants, as long as he doesn't get eaten by them. He's the one in the crystal pillar. I can confirm it. Zhang Yingying snorted coldly. "Stay away from that stupid woman if you want to live. You should have split from her from the beginning." Luo Nan prompted Tian Si to follow him, then he laughed. "The enemy has made ample preparations. I may have to deal with a hostage threat situation. It is better for her to be by my side. It gives me peace of mind." "Are you fond of her?" "Who knows, Tilda? In any case, we should try to avoid risks." Zhang Yingying choked on her words before angrily saying, "I'm just afraid that you can't protect her, and she becomes a hostage threat like you said." "That's just a problem of ability." Luo Nan locked onto two threat targets via his mental senses as he cautiously observed the surrounding situation. At the same time, he talked with Zhang Yingying and devoted a bit of mental energy in watching Tian Si. Many lines of operation, many sides to pay attention to. This was a bitter task for anyone, but Luo Nan could handle it. He was able to do all these neatly in a completely non-chaotic manner. In fact, Luo Nan's brain had truly become much clearer through the last 10 days of cultivation. He went through lessons and exchanges with Yuan, bamboo pole, paper cut, and the others. They tacitly wanted him to understand explicitly several matters of common sense and norms. This was to prepare him for times when decisions needed to be made. Which essential elements that needed to be considered? What could be ignored? Luo Nan gained a fixed set of rules regarding this. There was also his cultivation with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, even if he had yet to reach steady progression in it. His accomplishments were already enough to advance his reaction and coordination ability by leaps and bounds. No matter what situation he faced, he would find it much easier than before. He had a fixed set of rules he could follow. He even devoted a bit of mental effort to Xue Lei. "Lister, steady yourself a bit. Don't charge too fiercely." "No problem. I'm around the 110th floor. I'll be there soon." Xue Lei's breathing remained relatively steady, but he was clearly in a nervous mood. Luo Nan calmed him. "No need to be so tense. I've already dealt with 3 of them. This move of Puppeteer's is useless against me." He arrived at the fire escape passageway as he spoke. Just as he was about to push the door open, he sensed that something was wrong. His heart lantern of the eye's orifice faintly flashed, and he withdrew his arm immediately. There was a dark green beetle atop the handle of the door. It lashed out with its blade pincers, seeking to stab Luo Nan's fingers, but missing by a hair. The blade pincers had a sharp point, serrated inner edges, and glowed with a lush green. Luo Nan suspected that the result of being stabbed by it wouldn't be pretty. The strike had missed. The beetle, which was the size of a fist, buzzed, spread its wings, and cleaved down toward his face. Amid Tian Si's startled cry, Luo Nan swung the loose-leaf folder in his other hand like a fly swatter. It whistled in the air, and the dark green beetle jumped up and avoided it. Then the beetle pounced down, displaying intelligence inconceivable for an insect. It seemed as if Luo Nan could not block the beetle, having swung with full force and missed. But a thin piece of paper drifted out of Luo Nan's loose-leaf notebook. The paper was within the beetle's attack trajectory, and it transformed in the air. It contracted like a spring and exploded open to reveal a small figure. It flew down from up high with a flying kick to knock the beetle far away. The sole move exhausted all of its strength, and the small figure fell atop Luo Nan's shoulder. It was a paper man the size of a palm. Its 4 limbs were of equal sizes, and its face was indistinct. It was just a thin piece of paper, but it adopted a boxing stance. It appeared quite lively in its oddness. The series of changes happened as rapidly as a falcon swooping down the instant a hair rose. Tian Si only cried out in alarm at this moment. Things were far from over. The beetle, which was knocked flying, shook a bit before pouncing back over, while approximately 7 beetles came flying through the slit of the door to the fire escape passageway. They appeared to be cast from the same mold. They buzzed with their wings and zoomed over all at once. They formed an oppressive mass of darkness, and it made one's scalp go numb from simply looking at them. Luo Nan hurriedly retreated, bringing Tian Si along with him. A hair earlier, the small paper man atop his shoulder had soared to the skies. It cast the figure of a courageous fighting master as it faced the enemy head-on. It possessed no fear as its fists punched and its legs kicked. Its strikes were heavy, for it sent 3 of the beetles flying one after another, stopping the momentum of the beetle assault. But no matter how brave and tenacious the small paper man was, it was at a disadvantage in numbers. Its body was in no way inferior to the pack of beetles, but the few were no match for the many. Plus, it didn't possess the ability to fly. It had to push off the beetles in order to stay in the air, so it had limited movement. Soon it was in dire circumstances, and one of its arms was torn off to drift to the ground. Luckily, the beetle's reactions weren't that keen nor shrewd. The small paper man's aura confused them, and they dropped to the ground to crowd around the arm. The small size of the target made it so that only a few of the beetles could get to it at once. This gave the small paper man time to recover. Luo Nan continued to withdraw. His gaze never left the small battlefield as he asked, "Is controlling beetles also one of Puppeteer's skills?" Zhang Yingying didn't immediately respond. "Hello." A sharp honk rang out. Zhang Yingying had smacked down hard, sounding her car's horn. She was rushing over here and was suddenly startled by Luo Nan's words. She couldn't control herself as she furiously said, "It's Black Beetle. That asshole. He has a conscience even smaller than a beetle's." Black Beetle. Luo Nan recalled that fellow. It seemed that he, Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and a few others belonged to the same gaming group. During the operation to stop the human-faced arachnid at Limestone Water Village pub, Black Beetle had left just because he hated the blunt way Yuan talked to him. After that event, he received a bad evaluation for his contribution to the operation. He took it out on Luo Nan, calling him on the phone and threatening him. It was really unknown how Zhang Yingying and the others could play with someone with this personality. At present, this person had already made his move, and it was made against Luo Nan. Black Beetle's stance was very clear. Zhang Yingying went silent for several seconds after speaking. Her voice lowered to a whisper. She didn't mention personal matters. She just said, "Don't look at him as a sorcerer. Pay attention to his close-quarter attacks. His speed isn't fast, but he makes weird changes. He possesses explosive strength, and he has many malicious techniques." Luo Nan's gaze scanned across the mass of beetles. "That's really bad, right? Is he an activation class?" What? Zhang Yingying didn't understand for a time. Soul strength activation. What Papercut is proficient in? Aren't people divided into control class and activation class? He looks quite like an activation class to me. Zhang Yingying still didn't understand what Luo Nan was getting at. She just said, "Correct, he's an activation class. However, I want you to be wary of his close-quarters attacks. That's what's most effective against you." "I know." Luo Nan gave a casual reply, his gaze never leaving the cloud of beetles. At the same time, Luo Nan made a subtle adjustment in the precision of his mental senses. He locked dead on to the owner of the cloud of beetles. The enemy's elevator had already arrived at the 142nd floor. Chapter 153, Advantages and Disadvantages, Part 1-2. Translator Strivon. Luo Nan's attitude in his response was not what Zhang Yingying wanted out of him at all. She smacked her steering wheel once more. "You're playing things down 2D asterisk MN much. Haven't you been taking classes this whole time? You don't even understand how to analyze the factors in victory or defeat. What are you playing at? What did the secretary teach you when all is said and done?" "I learned a bit. The most basic principle is to analyze the advantages and disadvantages for the enemy and myself. The idea is to play to one's strengths while grasping the enemy's weak points to pressure them into desperation and death. Also, 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 one must have absolute confidence in one's advantages. One absolutely cannot lose their imposing aura. That's just a placebo that bastard Crag burst poured into you, okay? It's amazing. Luo Nan expressed his admiration very sincerely, but this made Zhang Yingying look upward in anger. She really wanted to lift this kid by the ear and give him a lesson, but now was not the time for nonsense. She could only grit her teeth, suppress her temper, and explain things layer by layer. Let me tell you, your advantages lie completely in long-range techniques, and mostly on the mental plane. The Black Beetle you are facing right now knows you in and out. Plus, his strength far exceeds yours. Mental senses and similar foresights are half useless. You have mental attack techniques right. They look quite decent, but if the enemy is prepared, it wouldn't be hard for them to execute responsive measures. They've already gone to this degree, so they won't be scared to put in a bit more effort. Luo Nan seriously listened to Zhang Yingying's analysis, but he did not express an opinion. In the end, he just hung his head slightly down, closed his eyes, and breathed to adjust his mental state. When he opened his eyes, he simply said, "I'll do my best not to confront them head-on." I've reached the 125th floor," Xue Lei spontaneously interrupted them, reminding them that action was better than talk. Further time wasted on this squabble would allow Black Beetle to come killing over. "Roger." Luo Nan gave him a short response. From beginning to end, regardless of Xue Lei or the two dangerous targets, they were all within the range of his senses. Luo Nan grasped each of their actions, and he was even able to estimate specific numbers. Puppeteer led the Devil Ray to ram against the wall. Black Beetle just got out of the elevator. The straight line distance is 55 meters, and they're advancing at a uniform velocity. There aren't any routes that are better. Move straight ahead. The first part of his speech was directed toward Zhang Yingying. The last three words were an order for Tian Si to dash inside the fire escape passageway. He even gave her a push. But the bugs. Tian Si's hairs stood on end when she looked at the dozen of ugly beetles piled atop each other. But she was quite strong-willed. Her legs didn't go weak. Better than dealing with people. Although he said this, Luo Nan shook his notebook and its pages spread apart, allowing another small paper man to jump out. It traveled outside the pile of beetles to help its companion break down the pressure and caused the battle to become livelier. Tian Si couldn't laugh at all when seeing this miniature, comical battle. A series of strange events, starting from the mad security officers, gripped her heart from beginning to end. Luo Nan would occasionally cast her a glance, and this made her heart beat faster. This was mostly because of fear. But she remembered everything that Luo Nan had said through his wristband. This young man, who was around 6 years younger than her, didn't hide anything. All his apprehensions and thoughts were open and level. Luo Nan's calmness, as he pondered, the situation gave off a sense of tolerance and kindness. These attributes showed clearly. Luo Nan didn't want her to be taken hostage, but this didn't mean that feelings existed between the two. He just wanted to avoid trouble. However, a truly ruthless person wouldn't have considered this at all. Tian Si thought of that person, the person she tried to contact in secret. After the situation escalated, Tian Si had tried countless times to contact that person. The call was unable to go through. She was completely offline. Compared to Luo Nan, that person was more likely to manifest a callous, deep core behind those exquisite features. It was quite odd for Tian Si to be able to think of all this in such dire circumstances. Perhaps this was a woman's gift. Several thoughts and emotions churned in her mind before Tian Si let out a self-mocking laugh. A bit of calmness had reappeared in this constantly hazy and confusing situation. She stopped doing meaningless things, like hesitating, doubting, holding her breath, and so on. She cautiously headed straight forward toward the fire escape passageway. The two small paper men were tangled in a clump with the beetles, but this meant that the path to the fire escape passageway was clear. Luo Nan and Tian Si walked a few paces. A bit of restlessness appeared when they passed the mass of beetles. Tian Si instinctively shivered, and Luo Nan promptly reminded her, "Don't pay attention to them." Tian Si saw that she was only a few steps away from the door to the fire escape passageway. She simply closed her eyes and reached out with her arms. The speed of her legs didn't slow, but instead quickened. Her hand touched the door in the span of a breath. The beetles she was so concerned about didn't turn around and come after her. The staircase was dusky, and there weren't more than a few of the beetles. Luo Nan held the door open behind her, but he didn't go inside. He just faced Tian Si and said, "Head straight down, don't think about the matter regarding the elevator. We're not going together." Tian Si's words didn't receive a response from Luo Nan at all. The teenager before her eyes had long since turned around to intensely watch the situation atop the viewing platform. His body leaned against the half-opened door. His back was slightly bent so that he could spring into action at any time. Tian Si hesitated a bit once again, but before Luo Nan could speak, a muffled explosion sounded at the viewing platform. The noise was enough to shake one's heart. Screams weaved within the deep and heavy sound. A powerful jet of water sprayed from the middle of Heavenly Ocean Lake. The water rushed to the dome above, sweeping all the hanging decorations down to the ground. What was more shocking was the enormous shadow within the jet of water. It seemed to push off the dome in a flip to heavily land. The pool of water fiercely rushed forth, spraying the surrounding displays. The tourists who were spurred by curiosity to surround the swimming pool and watch the commotion were knocked unsteadily. Some of them even fell into the water. They cried one after another. The viewing platform was now a chaotic mess. "He has considerable strength. You're still not leaving." Tian Si watched, stupefied when faced with this scene. Only when Luo Nan reminded her did she finally understand that she was a meaningless character in this scene of crisis. She gritted her teeth, turned around, and hurriedly went down the stairs. Her heels clacked against the ground, and soon she disappeared without a trace. Puppeteer's methods turned the viewing platform into a complete mess, but the beetles in front of the fire escape passageway became restless as well. It was as if their intelligence instantly soared up by 2 levels. Most of the beetles flew up, and this allowed the paper men who couldn't fly to dispose of the rest. The highly intelligent beetles of the bunch broke free from the stupid situation. They seized the opportunity to locate their true target. A dozen pairs of compound eyes locked on Luo Nan standing in front of the door to the fire escape passageway. They made a slight adjustment, buzzed, and swarmed over. The oppressive darkness gave off the vibe of a horror film. Luo Nan didn't respond immediately. His gaze didn't even rest upon the mass of beetles. His gaze pierced through them to fall onto a certain someone on the viewing platform. The imposing aura of the Devil Ray made the viewing platform a complete mess. Of the crowd of tourists, some held their heads in their hands, some ran away. There were a few unfortunate people who were struggling in the water. Only Luo Nan had his gaze rested on that person. The man wore black clothes that gave off the air of an investigator. He paired them with a gaudy tie, and he had one hand in his pocket. He sauntered over and was on a completely different wavelength than the other people on the viewing platform. Although his pace was leisurely, his speed was actually extremely fast. It was as if he possessed a technique that shrank distance. He displayed outstanding body control and coordination. This man was none other than Black Beetle. Currently, Black Beetle and Luo Nan were merely 40 meters apart from each other. A trained and experienced ability user could easily identify the target at this distance. Black Beetle blasted Luo Nan with a laugh. The rainbow stripes engraved on his black teeth sent an aberrant and sinister force through the air. The assaulting swarm of beetles had their speed increased by several dozen %. Luo Nan's eyes closed halfway, and the imminent crisis seemed to blur with a layer of mist. His vision wasn't clear, but his heart lantern shimmered within the shrine that was his brain, revealing the flying trajectory of every beetle and even predicting their movements. The trajectories crossed and extended as an invisible spider web was laid out. Luo Nan was situated in the center of this spider web. Any movement made by any beetle was reflected in his mind. They crawled on this spider web. The beetles slowed down when they hit the spider web. It wasn't that the beetles' speed had reduced. The beetles' extent of movement was lowered by a level thanks to the predictive nature of Luo Nan's judgment and awareness. This was a newly learned skill. This was an application of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. At the same time, this skill had fused into his innate mental senses and was displaying its utility. The flying beetles were just as Luo Nan had judged. Realistically speaking, they were no different than his paper men on the ground. They were all merely mediums of the activation of soul strength. They were core vehicles. They were operational structures of energy and information. Under the clairvoyance of Luo Nan's mental senses, the special configurations of each and every beetle's body were revealed. There existed a slight difference with the pyramid shape he was most familiar with, but Papercut's lectures had touched upon several of those fundamental morphing patterns. Therefore, on the plane visible to the naked eye, the changing core structure of the numerous beetles was tied to a certain rhythm. All this entered Luo Nan's clairvoyance. Not a hair was missing as they were projected into his mind. And so, Luo Nan's mental senses blended together with the illumination of his heart lantern. The spider web originally involved only the movement of material bodies, but several more facets were incorporated all of a sudden. They were numerous and close together, and they piled layer upon layer. The beetle's flying assault immediately slowed by a factor once more. In the realm of reaction, being slower by a beat was tantamount to being slower by a world of difference. Luo Nan's situation was far more extreme. Various changes caused synchronized reactions to form in the control center of Luo Nan's body, and Luo Nan performed responses in accordance to the level of danger. Luo Nan stepped to the side, let go of the door to the fire escape, and added a bit more force to the automatic spring of the door. This was a series of simple actions. The rarest thing about them was how clear it was. It wasn't messy at all, and it had a leisurely air to it. It was the embodiment of full-body coordination. Half of the results of Luo Nan's 10 days of cultivation in the heart lantern of the eye's orifice lay in here. The door heavily closed, and the beetle's inability to dodge in time through the glass of the door could be witnessed. They collided into the door, sounding like the pelting of hail. The sound was quite crisp. Of course, this wasn't enough to stop them. Although these beetles weren't made of steel, a few impacts like these weren't enough to hurt them. Luo Nan wasn't hoping for this blow to be successful. He just wanted to use the door to block them as he ran down the stairs. He still had his eyes half closed as he ran. The invisible spider web revolved around him in the void. There it was right above him on the mental plane he was oh so familiar with. A vicious and ugly shadow heeded his call and emerged by his side. It was in the center of the spider web as well. Its 6 eyes circulated with light as it absorbed information in all directions. It was the executioner that took out the 3 mad security officers a moment ago. Human-faced arachnid. It unleashed its siege hammer attack in the next instant. Chapter 299, Advantages and Disadvantages, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. The human-faced arachnid Luo Nan wielded wasn't a native type. Its origins lay in the faith products developed by the Order of Justice. Luo Nan had personally made a high-imitation version of it later on. The one he had made and used back in faith product was quite convenient. Unfortunately, Weng had destroyed it. Luo Nan had forgotten about this matter with the passage of time. Before returning back to work, Fairchild actually had someone deliver a small bottle of raw materials to Luo Nan. Luo Nan didn't know what Fairchild was thinking. He didn't expect this at all. This bottle was the same metal bottle Luo Nan had thrown to the ground a moment ago. Of course, the practical application of infusing the substance in the bottle with some negative emotions was not hard at all for Luo Nan. It wouldn't be easy for Luo Nan to summon his first human-faced arachnid, the Wraith Sign, for it was within the Bloodflame Order. The imitation human-faced arachnid Luo Nan just made could serve as a substitute. Earlier, the human-faced arachnid followed along Luo Nan's mental senses in locking on to all threat targets. The reason why it didn't make a move was because of a shaky feeling Luo Nan had when observing via the life sketches. It was like the premonition an experienced hunter got right before they pulled the trigger. As matters stood, no matter how bad Luo Nan's premonition was, now was not the time for hesitation. With a mere thought, the human-faced arachnid spewed an invisible seismic wave. It went through the insects lacking the light of intelligence and penetrated the barrier that was the fleshly body to bombard against Black Beetle's pressing soul. The attack struck dead on. A spasm could be seen upon the beetles' bodies, and the approaching man slowed a bit, but that was all. He became stunned for only a moment before his head tilted a bit to the side. The gaze behind those sunglasses seemed to be able to penetrate through the structure of the building and fall on Luo Nan's body. All right, Zhang Yingying's jinx had come true. Luo Nan's long-range attack wasn't effective. This wasn't a rare occurrence. Luo Nan encountered many instances where the siege hammer attack was ineffective. The human-faced arachnids wreaked havoc in Xia City for nearly a month, and effective means to counter them were gradually known. Various powers centered on the many functions that the human-faced arachnids yielded. The Order of Justice was even able to produce faith products. It was very plausible that others had prepared similar mental defenses against the human-faced arachnid. Luo Nan was startled for only a moment. He didn't get dismayed or flustered. At that moment, he already reached the 141st floor. He slightly hesitated in the stairwell before walking out of the fire escape. No other people could be seen on this floor. The lit public areas of this building were mostly centered on the crystal pillar, emitting a dreamlike deep blue light. Luo Nan's gaze glanced over. The water rippled with waves, not at all still, but the magnitude of the vibrations had lessened. No image of the Devil Ray could be found within Luo Nan's field of vision. Luo Nan's thoughts spun in his head. His feet didn't stop as he walked straight forward along the edge of the crystal pillar. He moved quickly toward the elevators of the central area. The series of movements consumed quite the amount of physical energy. His breathing became a bit unsteady. Luo Nan just reached the middle area of the crystal pillar when two loud thuds sounded out in the stairwell behind him. The sliding doors opened up a mere 2 seconds later, and Black Beetle walked out with large strides, wearing a suit. He let out a sharp whistle in mockery. Luo Nan immediately turned around to look at this man head-on. Black Beetle's external appearance wasn't a surprise to Luo Nan. Luo Nan had long since memorized this man's facial details very clearly through the use of his mental senses. If Luo Nan had to say that something was different about this man, he would point out the flying group of beetles revolving around the man's body, as well as the two paper men squeezed in his hand. Clearly, it was hard to use the paper men effectively against an ability user like Black Beetle. Black Beetle's feet didn't stop moving. The flesh of his face, half covered by sunglasses, pulsated in movement. His lips split to reveal black teeth engraved with lines. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment before understanding that this was Black Beetle's smile. "We meet for the first time, kid. I did make an appointment with you before." The curses and words of tasteless trash venting through the phone. Luo Nan was quite frank in telling Black Beetle his impression of him. Having his self-introduction be interrupted, a green air sudden spawned upon Black Beetle's face, and the patterns on his black teeth moved back and forth. At the same time, Black Beetle exerted force with his fingers, kneading the dying paper men. Soon they lost their shapes as they were ground to dust, and the dust fell between Black Beetle's fingers. Luo Nan's eyes twitched, 10 days of bitter effort half gone. Black Beetle clapped his hands upon seeing what Luo Nan was looking at, flicking off the last scraps of paper. His gaze looked straight at Luo Nan from behind a pair of sunglasses. "You have quite the quick tongue. However, activation class. I heard that you have problems with your interference ability in hitting stagnation. The intelligence people are really quite a joke." Luo Nan didn't talk. Right then, his vision covered Black Beetle and the flying beetles surrounding him. The heart lantern of his eye's orifice and his mental senses functioned simultaneously. They were analyzing and predicting all this time. While his mind focused on observation, Luo Nan moved back. He faced Black Beetle as he walked backward at a moderate pace. His actions would normally appear comical, but his movements looked fluid and easy. This was the result of bodily coordination. Luo Nan certainly wouldn't have been able to do such actions 10 days ago. The marvels of cultivating in the eye's orifice lay in here. Cultivating in the eye's orifice wasn't simply cultivating in the eyes. It cultivated the entire body. According to Gym Master Xiu, it was the beginning of whole-body cultivation. Its application allowed the essentials to be brought out. 10 days of focused training, and though hard indicators like Luo Nan's power, speed, and so on didn't really increase, his levels in integration, coordination, control, and similar abilities produced clear increases. Even Black Beetle raised his eyebrows when he saw Luo Nan's ability. That robotic woman really put in the time and energy to teach you, eh? Is it because you brought her to ecstasy with your tongue? The words digressed miles away from the topic, making Luo Nan's eyelids twitch when he heard them. But Luo Nan's observing and retreating rhythm remained calm and unbroken. He was only 10 meters away from the side edge of the central crystal pillar. The elevator area was just a turn away from there. Black Beetle twisted his neck. His feet seemed to slow, but in fact they quickened. He spoke as he strode. "What are you running for? Don't you remember? I said that we will slowly play together. One must be a man of his word and be resolute in his work. This has always been my motto." Regardless of how Black Beetle goaded, provoked, and teased Luo Nan made up his mind to not say a single word. He knew that the show had yet to begin. He was happy to encounter this situation, for Xue Lei had already broken through the entrance to the 130th floor. Only 40 to 50 meters of straight-line distance remained between them. However, ascending stairs and running were different in difficulty. Plus, the disparity between Luo Nan's and Black Beetle's speeds was very apparent. With just a few steps, Black Beetle could close the distance by around 30 meters. Luo Nan blinked and looked through half-lidded eyes. The scene in front of him blurred a bit. The way Black Beetle advanced forward appeared normal, but it was in fact bizarre and paradoxical. A prelude could be seen in any micro-movement in the shoulder, hip, waist, and back. Then there was his vigorous aura of life and the self-formed layout of his self-logic. All these details have been concealed from the life sketch all this time. It gave Luo Nan quite a bit of trouble in judging analytically. Luo Nan's spider web became much more complicated due to Black Beetle's existence. The energy consumption it required endlessly increased. Black Beetle's voice cut through in a timely manner. "Are you sure you want to keep running? Sure, sometimes the intelligence people are a joke, but sometimes they're useful as well. I know. The range of your mental senses is outstanding, and you have good mental attacks. Now you also have activation class skills. However, the information about your body and soul imbalance, about how your body is at its limits. This information should be correct, right? Kid, do you feel your fingers becoming numb, a burning sensation all over your body, or aches in various places of your body?" Luo Nan's eyelids twitched once more, but this wasn't merely due to Black Beetle's words. It was also because the distance between him and Black Beetle had shrunk to a 20-meter juncture. For an ability user, they were a mere jump away from each other. Black Beetle spoke even more leisurely, while the pressure given off by his movements continued to rise. "You're just like the classic story of Cheng Yaojin and his 3-act strokes. You only have a few moves, and though you may gain the upper hand in the beginning, you have nothing else once those moves are exhausted. Everyone can see what those moves are. Have you calculated the factors that determine victory and defeat before? Calculating the causes of victory and the causes of defeat. Calculating advantages and disadvantages. Actually, you don't need to lick that robotic woman. I, grandfather of insects, can give you a hands-on teaching." "Oh, the eyes. It's your eyes, right. They're going to burst a blood vessel." A vibrant scarlet red glistened within Luo Nan's half-closed eyes. It was just as Black Beetle said. The veins surrounding Luo Nan's eyes were about to rupture. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice, when used in conjunction with mental senses, yielded great results. The trajectories of movement on the material plane. The control source on the mental plane. two interacting structures of energy and information. Homologous elements on different planes. All these interfered with and affected one another. Only by using a way to integrate them could the most comprehensive form be manifested. This was rather useful in increasing the cultivation progress of the eye's orifice, and was shown when observing the fish in the party venue. But this inseparably close relationship had quite the hidden danger for Luo Nan's current cultivation situation. Luo Nan's cultivation during these past few days was always filled with the sense of danger. He failed to take this into account during this critical juncture. Now, after today's events, the hidden danger began to reveal itself. The most direct was the most fatal. It was the limit to how much his body could bear. Black Beetle believed that the crucial moment had come. A grotesque chuckle bubbled out of his throat. "We can continue to play, or we can simply get to the point. Why don't you tell me what you saw in the logic world?" The question slashed through the air at Luo Nan. It made Luo Nan, whose eyes were deep at their limits of suffering, have his mind throb with a thought. That was a very secret matter that only a few people knew about. How did information about it leak out? It was during this moment of distraction that Black Beetle seized his chance. He never expected Luo Nan to simply spit out the answer. Even if he had spoken and acted in an oppressive manner, it was all for seizing this opportunity for a single strike. His figure suddenly blurred, and the swarm of beetles surrounding his body flashed. Even Zhang Yingying would want to praise this show of explosive power. In an instant, Black Beetle crossed a distance of nearly 20 meters to seize Luo Nan's face with his hand. Luo Nan saw that only an arm separated them, and an attack was unleashed on the mental plane. Using up the last of your limited abilities. Black Beetle had expected Luo Nan's method of response. This baby kid could only do a few things time and time again since the beginning. He had long since prepared to take on Luo Nan's attack. He had deliberately reinforced himself with a protective spell before mobilizing. He could withstand at least 5 similar attacks in total. Black Beetle stared, focused at Luo Nan's eyes. He hoped that the high pressure would cause Luo Nan's veins to rupture in the moment of the kid's fear and despair. He wanted to see the blood gush out. He would use the hexia to capture the wonderful footage. Then he would send it to that robotic woman when he got back. He would send it to all those who sucked up to this kid and to his old friends. The attack on the mental plane made contact with the spell-formed protective net in the next instant. Black Beetle had his desires fulfilled. He saw the corner of Luo Nan's eyes flow with blood. His lips split open to greet this occurrence with a smile. "Oh, hold on." The instinct and insight Black Beetle had tempered through hard work and time sensed something strange. The mental attack didn't act as expected when it made contact with his protective spell. It didn't intertwine with this cushion and transform into nothingness. Instead, a strand of wind, even more intangible than a ray of light, flared inside him. The wind passed through the gap, and light illuminated the earth below. Penetratingly bright light shone for a time, unblockable and unstoppable. Chapter 300, Only I Know, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Black Beetle could be considered a mentally enhanced ability user. Even if he didn't really have a gift for sensory observation, he possessed basic common knowledge regarding it. Naturally, Black Beetle would find reaching the level of a penetrating bright light, something unblockable and unstoppable, with his sensory observation to be an excellent thing. The problem lay in the fact that he had become a target of observation via mental senses. The observation of his entire body could be compared to wind leaking through and rain seeping in. Every detail of his body and mind, from the inside to the outside, could be seen. This was enough to drive him crazy. This was what Black Beetle was feeling right now. Looking at the situation from a realistic and understandable level, Luo Nan's face was within the grasp of his palm. Black Beetle just needed to reach out ever so slightly, and he would be able to tear the skin off the kid's face. But as soon as that unblockable and unstoppable feeling emerged, he truly felt that winds were penetrating his body from all directions. He couldn't suppress the feeling of weakness that instantly swept across his entire body. What the heck was going on? Black Beetle found it difficult to figure out this sudden change within a short period of time. He looked through the slits between his fingers, and the only thing he saw was Luo Nan's eyes oozing with blood. Those pupils had slightly dilated. They were unfocused. They didn't move at all. They appeared a bit lifeless. He had just reached this conclusion when Luo Nan's eyes moved. The messy rays of light converged a bit, and a faint gleam of light locked with his gaze. The glimmer was akin to needles, penetrating with a force like threads. The subtle piercing force prickled Black Beetle's thick skin. At most there was an instant of pain, but the force felt like it pierced into his eyeballs, into his heart, and into his brain. There were certainly other consequences. This was what Black Beetle felt. Black Beetle couldn't form any protection against being riddled with holes, and the force of the piercing needles moved unimpeded, unhindered. The force exploited his weakest and most fatal locations, messing with them. In an instant, Black Beetle felt a thunderous pain. The pain exploded within the skull of his brain, and it rapidly spread out. It was impossible to control once it had started. Black Beetle howled in pain, his eyeballs nearly bulging out of his eye sockets. The colors of black and red interlaced, turning his vision into a sheet of chaos. His mind instinctively flooded with fear, but his many years of life-threatening combat experience continued to spur him. He seized all the courage he could muster, and he did his best to probe with his hand. His intent was to grab the mischievous kid in a single move. He was just a fist away, but his fingernails, coated with poison, grasped only air. A fruitless attack, and Black Beetle's body continued to rush forward. Only then did he realize all the things going on in his body while he was doing his high-speed assault. Pain exploded. His senses were confused. There were changing stimulations to his nervous system. All this made the equilibrium of his body a complete mess. Left asterisk. His extended fingers swiped across the hard wall, then his wrist bent to the corner of the wall. Next, his head and body collided into the wall. In the end, Black Beetle's entire body had smacked into the wall of the elevator area. His body failed to react completely due to the assault of intense pain. He had smashed into the wall hard, without even an ounce of cushioning. He then slid to the ground. The sunglasses that covered his face had snapped. Only at this point did the pain somewhat alleviate in his brain. However, the feeling of the impact to his fingers, wrist, head, and body came next. This wave of pain was nothing much when compared to the last, but the feeling of disgrace of smacking into the wall and falling to the ground was like having sulfuric acid splashed to his chest and sprayed all over his head and face. "I'll kill you," a burning and corroding heat proliferated outward with Black Beetle's howl. At the same time, he threw down his deformed sunglasses, which he had crushed with his hand. He ignored his vision, which was still chaotic, as well as his terrible sense of balance. He used the wall as support while he struggled to stand up. He waved his arms, venting, and controlled the beetles to fly in all directions. However, everything he did was useless. He was unable to touch even a hair of Luo Nan's. No, I need to calm down. I need to calm down. Feelings of anger and fear entwined and undulated with the series of failed attacks. There was a trough in this wave emotions, and Black Beetle seized it. He went all out in calming his mind as he tried to break free from his completely horrible state. He leaned against the wall while trying to call out to his temporary partner, Puppeteer, Puppeteer, F***. Before Puppeteer could respond, the prickling feeling came back again. But this time, pain didn't come to him. A faint sound from who knows where came instead. No, it was a telepathic thought. Black Beetle smashed the wall behind him with a hand. His heart was filled with hate, but also near inescapable fear. Powerful people with formidable soul strength and mastery of techniques could indeed transmit thoughts to others in a unidirectional manner. But most of the time, this could only occur during states of peace. In true battles of life and death, the mind must be stretched taut and the opponent must be highly prepared. This sort of unidirectional imbuing of thought would certainly suffer a great deal of interference. It was practically impossible to realize, while maintaining the integrity and accuracy of the transmitted information. But right now, a sound rang within Black Beetle's brain. There was a bit of noise at the very beginning, but it grew clearer and clearer. In factor analysis, I've learned it before. Luo Nan expressed his thought telepathically to continue the topic they were discussing a moment earlier. Namely, the topic of analyzing factors in victory or defeat. Black Beetle had undoubtedly raised the topic to mock Luo Nan and mess with his emotions. But now, Luo Nan bounced the topic back at Black Beetle, stuffing Black Beetle's brain bit by bit. The advantages I've analyzed for victory are different than yours. You see. You can't see what I can see. You don't know what I know. You can't compare to what I command. You are unable to reach where I'm at. Lastly, I have come to a conclusion. My superiority lies outside of your deficient imagination. The broad and uniform sentences of information were done in a somewhat shaky manner, having been pieced together on the fly. But the cruel ridicule came permeated within Luo Nan's distant telepathic thought, branding into Black Beetle's mind. Crack, Black Beetle crushed one of his back molars. Then his mood followed his crushed tooth with a spray of blood. I'll F *U back 8 GNEOATONS. Black Beetle's crude cursing, and his boiling blood was incapable of drowning out the bone-chilling wind in his mind. He understood the situation well. Luo Nan's projected telepathic thoughts weren't that powerful. They were like strands of silk. But no matter what defensive and protective means Black Beetle used, they were unable to interfere with Luo Nan's telepathy at all. This thread of telepathy could come as it pleased and could stay as it pleased. It wantonly smeared a drawing to be engraved in Black Beetle's mental plane. Such an ability seemed inhuman. It completely affirmed the ability that was akin to a penetrating bright light, unblockable and unstoppable. Black Beetle could not suppress his fear and shame. They were like two swords stabbing in and stabbing out. They took turns stabbing him and cutting him, shredding his dignity beyond recognition. If just a little bit of force was added, just a little. Ding! The sound that indicated the arrival of an elevator rang by Black Beetle's ear. Black Beetle had somewhat recovered from the intense pain and chaotic vision by now. He dimly saw, through the corner of his eye, a faint figure flit past him, and soon the elevator door closed again. A sound no longer came from Luo Nan. The changes in details were like a sudden foreshadowing emerging, and it made Black Beetle's mind jolt. A certain thought spawned in his mind. If that kid can truly get rid of me that easily, there's no need to push himself until his eyes start flowing with blood. Plus, he spewed a bunch of nonsense. Though Black Beetle had these doubts, he was unable to think further. He staggered half a step, turned his body, and looked toward the elevator. He merely saw the elevator door close and head downward. He looked around with his somewhat fuzzy vision. The elevator area was spacious and empty. It was just empty space all around. Luo Nan's figure wasn't there at all. Yes, Luo Nan just needed to add a bit more force, and he would be done for. That King kid has a problem with his interference ability. Black Beetle was able to deal with the purely mental attack, but Luo Nan probably couldn't even muster the force to affect Black Beetle's body and soul structure. Me. Black Beetle let out another round of cursing as he smashed into the elevator door, but all he did was cause a dent in the metal plate. The elevator indicator was already showing changes in the floor number. He stopped hesitating and shook his head fiercely. He locked onto the fire escape that ran on the outer side of the corridor. He rushed over in a few steps, rammed the door to the stairwell open, and jumped down the narrow gap between the flight of stairs. At the same time, he tried making contact with his companion once more. "Puppeteer, say something if you're still alive. Tusk, that kid is too sneaky. I nearly choked to death in the water. I almost lost my puppets." Puppeteer's voice finally came through in a bout of cursing. "Snake Tongue's protective spell isn't worth **T. This is his last move," Black Beetle spoke through gritted teeth. "He doesn't have the energy to follow up, so he fled. He certainly can't last long. Keep an eye on elevator number 15. I'm looking, it stopped, on the 133rd floor. In the crystal pillar, the devil ray ran by the high-speed elevator's side. Black Beetle didn't slack as well. He used his elbow to push off the railings. His body flipped, and he accurately stopped at the 133rd floor. He charged into the door to the building and went in. Within the elevator room, in front of elevator number 15, stood a white-collared worker. The elevator door opened. It was none other than this person who had caused the elevator to stop. This white-collared worker was given a scare by Black Beetle charging out from the fire escape. The white-collared worker had just turned his head, and Black Beetle moved like a phantom to seize the worker's body. Black Beetle extended his hand to the worker's head and fiercely slammed the worker into the metal door. Blood immediately flowed from the white-collared worker's head, and he fainted. "Thanks for the help." Black Beetle spat out these words without a trace of sincerity as he curled his lips into a grin. His expression grew all the more malevolent, and the aura around his body practically burned. The tie wrapped around his neck appeared like a living snake as it slipped out of the collar of his suit. Upon the tie, one of the beetle patterns inexplicably squirmed and budged out. It turned into a real beetle and crawled along the tie. As soon as Black Beetle would see Luo Nan, he would tie Luo Nan up with his tie and shove the poisonous insect down Luo Nan's throat. Screw whether Luo Nan lived or died. The elevator, which was automatically controlled by a computer program, was not concerned at all about the situation outside. It arrived at its destination, and its door automatically opened. Black Beetle leaned forward and was about to move. But the elevator was absolutely empty. Not a trace of a person could be found. No, there was something, a paper man. There was only this piece of work that was the size of a palm. It was of the same make as the two paper men Black Beetle had ground to pieces earlier. It possessed no fear, and it had stood there all this time since the elevator call button was pressed. It stood on the wooden floor of the elevator, holding a fighting stance. Screw you. The string of reason within Black Beetle's mind snapped just like that. He simply reached out with his palm and let out a tyrannical strength, disregarding how much pain his hand was in. He crushed the paper man into pieces. He didn't go down. He went back to the viewing platform. Within the crystal pillar behind Black Beetle, the devil ray ascended rapidly. Puppeteer gestured to Black Beetle through the protective glass, indicating that he was going up. The gesture was extremely normal to do, but it was an absolute mockery from Black Beetle's perspective. Black Beetle still wasn't able to understand what exactly happened to him. He just knew that Luo Nan had played him. It was just as the strand of telepathy Luo Nan had left and imprinted on his mental plane. You can't see what I can see. You don't know what I know. You can't compare to what I command. You are unable to reach where I'm at. They are Black Beetle punched out in madness, and the metal door of the elevator deformed from the smash. It could no longer close and was stuck in place. Harsh alarm lights lit up. Chapter 301, Only I Know, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. The viewing platform had been quite a lively place, a complete mess with all the tourists. This was caused by the Devil Ray breaking through the heavenly ocean lake. Some of them had left. Some police had arrived. And there were some who had stayed because they wanted to watch the fun. But when Luo Nan returned back up to the viewing platform, all sounds in the area were completely gone. There were a few dozen people collapsed everywhere. They were unconscious. No need to be puzzled. The person who did all this was Luo Nan himself. According to what Luo Nan learned during his lessons, the site must be evacuated before ability users clash. Multiple variables would make the situation complex, causing additional trouble. Of course, there were those who would deliberately cause chaos for their own benefit. However, Luo Nan believed that he wouldn't be able to harden his heart during crucial moments and do things decisively. Luo Nan didn't forget that he was facing a puppeteer. This person could remotely control intelligent life forms. As soon as they fight, any clear-headed person would likely become his shield. Luo Nan considered himself a rookie when it came to facing an enemy in battle, so he had to execute the teachings his seniors imparted to him with meticulousness. However, an experienced senior had truly been stunned by his series of actions and their results. How did you do it? Just how? Ha ha ha. Zhang Yingying smacked her steering wheel in her excitement. The sharp vibrations of the horn could even be heard by Luo Nan on the other side of the call. Zhang Yingying had held back a belly full of words during Luo Nan and Black Beetle's confrontation and exchange. She wanted to curse at Black Beetle, but also wanted to calm and warn Luo Nan. However, she knew fully well that Luo Nan was facing a situation in a completely vulnerable position. Any little unexpectedness during a crucial moment of life or death might lead to catastrophe. She could only suppress her concerns and resist opening her mouth with great difficulty. It was so much that she began worrying about Xue Lei. She didn't want to cause something bad to happen through good intentions and agitate Luo Nan's foe. This internal conflict was more torturous than fighting a powerful enemy in person. This lasted until the situation settled, and Zhang Yingying couldn't hold it back any longer. She took her belly full of air and exploded it forth. Zhang Yingying's shock and surprise spurred on Xue Lei, who was hard at work going up the stairs. He took a few deep panting breaths and commended Luo Nan. "Beautifully done, Nanster. Leave the rest to me. I'll be there soon." Luo Nan laughed as he wandered around the edge of the viewing platform. "We have plenty of time. Take a breather. Don't get knocked down as soon as you get here." Xue Lei panted. "Relax, there aren't any problems." Xue Lei was worried that he was adversely influencing Luo Nan just now. He rushed desperately up the stairs and nearly choked on his breathing. Though he had obtained his sign, his body still felt strained. Of course, the fact that Luo Nan was all right was better than anything. Xue Lei's mood relaxed, and it didn't take long for him to adjust his state. "Yo, Luo. I'm asking you." Zhang Yingying's excitement and complaints didn't lessen a bit. She smacked the steering wheel of her car, causing the horn to blare to the heavens. "Hurry up and tell me, how did you toy with that bug into being this miserable? That guy is a genuine megalomaniac, but he's no fool." Luo Nan was able to feel the pure joy that brimmed from the bottom of Zhang Yingying's heart. It must be said that Black Beetle could be considered an old acquaintance of hers. However, Zhang Yingying stood firmly by Luo Nan's side in this moment. Her stance was clear, never wavering at all. Luo Nan rather enjoyed this feeling of approval. He thought for a bit before giving a serious reply. "I put on a proper attitude and utilized my advantages to kill in a single blow. Unfortunately, there's still problems with my interference ability. I can only buy a bit of time. Kill in a single blow. Certainly, Cragburst must have taught you this. Am I right?" "Yes," Luo Nan admitted. It was strange, now that he thought about it. In the course of the past few days, Yuan, bamboo pole, and paper cut were all inclined toward technical and intellectual fields, the rarely touched upon strategies for facing enemies. When it was Cragburst's turn to teach, Cragburst had a stomach full of energy from being one of the last teachers. His section had been pushed back in the teaching schedule due to the issue with Luo Nan's interference ability. The few instances they got together were all long sessions. The topic always revolved around actual combat, and this gave Luo Nan a bit of practical experience. Cragburst had told him that the most important thing in facing a foe in combat was to have the right attitude. Whether the attitude was calm or a hot-blooded one must find an attitude that best fitted oneself. It might not be the most effective or the most thorough, but it was the most stable. It could withstand much more variables. In short, this attitude was a sort of irrevocable conviction. It could only be built atop the biggest and most irreplaceable advantages leading to victory. In extreme terms, people who possessed this mindset would think the following: the enemy could defeat me, but the enemy would never be able to defeat me in my area of expertise. Luo Nan followed this principle and first verified his field of dominance. "Yo, you're quite the bold fool. Cragburst, and you aren't the same type at all, okay?" Zhang Yingying had a deep understanding of Cragburst's temperament, so she found what Luo Nan said very hard to believe. "Luo Nan, you're a formulaic type. Can your small physique withstand playing with warriors in mortal conviction? Plus, what about your advantages? Mental senses and attacks, are they useful at all? Why are my advantages limited to just these?" Luo Nan felt a bit helpless. In the case of factors in victory and defeat, regardless of it being Zhang Yingying or Black Beetle, everyone had their minds set on his superiorities being his sensing distance and mental attacks. But Luo Nan never believed this was so. The world had powerful people in large numbers. There were certainly people stronger, probably very much stronger, than Luo Nan in regard to his mental sensing ability in terms of precision and range, no matter how outstanding it was. This was certainly also the case with the intensity of the mental attack power of the fierce siege hammer attack. He relied on the human-faced arachnid for. This sort of externally circulating advantage would be directly broken through by someone sooner or later. His superiority could only be established upon an irreplaceable element, unique only to him. You still have hidden cards. Zhang Yingying gave off a hint of skepticism. She felt she had quite an understanding of Luo Nan, so she couldn't think of the card Luo Nan had played to be able to toy with Black Beetle, to the point that Black Beetle wished he was dead. I heard you learned some skills from Xue Lei's teacher. Thinking about it, this teacher must be quite out of the ordinary to be able to produce a disciple like Xue Lei. But in just a days. Hey Xue Lei kid, what sort of quick tricks did your master teach? Xue Lei had already caught his breath while Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying were talking. His breathing calmed quite a bit, and he answered, "It's the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. It's not a technique that can be quickly learned. Techniques regarding the eyes can only." Oh God! Zhang Yingying also realized something at practically the same time. She was unable to hold back from asking Luo Nan the details of his mysterious victory. She spoke with a pressing tone. "Black Beetle said that the veins of your eyes burst. You didn't use a forbidden technique, did you? Are you okay?" "I'm all right." Luo Nan used his knuckles to lightly rub the corners of his eyes. He could still feel pain in his eyes, and they still flowed with blood, but these were all a bit less than before. The more Luo Nan downplayed his situation, the less Zhang Yingying dared to watch idly. She smacked her car's horn once more. Her excitement and elation was nearly exhausted. All that was left were anxiety and worry. Ignorant children will be ignorant children. Your eyes. You think you can go blind in a place like this? Hey, didn't your teacher warn you when he was teaching you? Xue Lei spoke unhappily. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice is like grinding with water. It is a gradual method. There are no forbidden techniques with it. Xue Lei had already ran up to the 140th floor. He could see Luo Nan at the limits of his vision, and he waved at him. The last 2 floors had to be climbed. He would make it there a step earlier than the 2 enemies. It could be said that Luo Nan had erected himself into an invincible position. Luo Nan was quite clear about his own situation. His eyes were a bit injured due to forcefully integrating the heart lantern of the eye's orifice with his mental senses. He had exceeded his limits. Right now, it was best to close his eyes and rest. But he didn't want things to end like this. Luo Nan used the protective glass at the edge of the viewing platform as support, and he automatically cast his vision far off in the distance. The color of the sky was becoming darker and darker, and the main body of Cloud City Water Village, the large activity area, and Acumen College further away were all lit with lights, drawing out areas upon areas of blurry shadows and outlines. The scene bore some resemblance to the Star River scene manifested by Luo Nan's mental senses. The only difference was where the blurry chaos lay within the Star River scene. Most of it were interferences formed from ability users' powers, while the blurriness before his eyes was simply due to the limits of light with vision. Before today, Luo Nan had tried several times to disperse the turbid clouds and dark mist within the Star River scene. Though he was grasping the details of the life sketches with greater precision, he was never able to achieve this. But it happened just now When he faced Black Beetle, Luo Nan succeeded in piercing a beam of light into the deepest depths of Black Beetle's body and soul structure, and drawing a life sketch of the greatest clarity. He gained lucidity on all the weak points of the living being who was Black Beetle. Only in this way was Luo Nan able to seize the initiative and play with Black Beetle like the other man was in the palm of his hands. That beam of light originated from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, at least partially. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice was not the cornerstone Luo Nan had erected his conviction upon, but this magical technique imparted to him by Gym Master Xue had undoubtedly played a vital role. Daily, the technique both accumulated water and drew water. It cut a spiritual orifice in the human body, activating Luo Nan's soul strength. And during times of practical application, it floated high above to illuminate below. It projected a prediction of the trajectories of movement on the material plane. It complemented Luo Nan's mental senses, observing the material to retrieve the environment. If one perspective was unclear, then Luo Nan could switch to a different perspective. More often than not, this led to near discoveries. The two referred to each other, and more could be seen than the sum of the two alone. If he used his mental senses independently, or if he purely used the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, none of this would be able to reach the mystical effect of a wind passing through the gap and light illuminating the earth below. But when the two were combined, the heart lantern of the eye's orifice swept away the turbid clouds and dark mist on the Star River scene produced by Luo Nan's mental senses. The information on the mental and material planes coupled. They intersected and positioned to form a strand of wind, a beam of subtle light that completely penetrated through to the truth underneath the thick exterior of chaos. Yes, coupling. Borrowing this principle truly delighted him in both body and mind. Luo Nan closed his eyes slightly. They spun and he opened them again. The light of his psychic mind could completely illuminate the life structure of ability users. He should be able to illuminate the void of a mere dusky sky. In this moment, Luo Nan cleansed himself with a new method of clairvoyance. He observed the empty space, and he gazed into the distance to the border of the world with the outline of the jungle. The sky, which was turning all the more darker, couldn't hinder him. Homologous information on the material plane and material plane linked up. They refined each other and burst forth with a marvelous spiritual light. The light was cast into the water reservoir of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Then the light passed through the eyes, through the void, and through the jumbled outlines of the jungle to illuminate the target from above. Within the wilted jungle stripped of leaves, the lake's surface appeared like a small mirror. At one side of the lake was gear. That small building carried a bit the color of rust. A river weaved between the trees and flowed past one side of the building. The river made a turn at the ends of Luo Nan's vision to extend off into the distance. It was like the scouring of time over the course of many years. When time moves, everything moves. Looking down from the high building, the river was moving, the jungle was moving, and the earth was moving. Gear was there, and it slowly rotated in a unique rhythm that possessed neither beginning nor end. Chapter 302, You Don't Understand, Part 1-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan quietly gazed at the skies and the earth ahead. He didn't move for a long while. He didn't even respond when Xue Lei made his way up the viewing platform and greeted him. Xue Lei was a bit scared. He could see that Luo Nan's face was smeared with tears of blood, painting the aberrant face of a demon. The corners of his eyes were bloodshot, and his eye sockets had a clear film of red. This appearance truly indicated that one should be immediately sent to the hospital. "Hey, is anyone going to talk?" Zhang Yingying had been ignored for quite some time, and she smacked her steering wheel once again. "Sister Wying, I see that something's not right with Nansta's state." Xue Lei began to feel nervous as he rushed to tell Zhang Yingying. However, Luo Nan's current calm state of mind was similar to the air gym master Xiu exuded in his daily life. He subconsciously lowered his voice for fear of disturbing Luo Nan. Before Xue Lei could get a response from Zhang Yingying, Luo Nan's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. "The breathing of heaven and earth may be seekable." His words came out of nowhere, stunning Xue Lei in his place. However, these words inexplicably felt familiar to Xue Lei. Xue Lei carefully pondered for a while before recalling that this was related to the gym master's theory on opportunity. Xue Lei had talked about this stuff to Luo Nan earlier on. However, the gym master originally meant that heaven and earth were grand and vast, while people's powers were insignificant in comparison. Cultivators needed to always work hard and be diligent in every area in order to be able to borrow the strength of heaven and earth for their own use. What stood out was the circulative channel of the mind, where the mind came before energy and energy came before strength. With these words from Luo Nan, it seemed that some internal core within Luo Nan had changed. Xue Lei didn't quite understand Luo Nan's way of thinking. He was also worried about Luo Nan's state. He could only ask carefully, "Nansta, the circulation and running of river water, the existence of life and death in the jungle. They each have their rules in a self-formed system. It could be said that they each possess formats. These small formats are like natural sets of gears made by heaven. They are pieced together to form a large format of heaven and earth." Luo Nan had already entered this mental state, and he continued explaining. "From the perspective of formatting theory, the heaven and earth format is grand and marvelous without bounds. It is abundant in layers, and there are no limits to its transformations. It is like a production line that assembles and installs complicated machinery. Countless gears operate according to order, transmitting motive power down the line." "It's happening again." Zhang Yingying couldn't refrain from groaning. There had been a similar spectacle of Luo Nan talking to himself during the night at Frost River Reality, and it was repeated today. Unfriendly thoughts, concepts, and ideas assaulted her ears. Zhang Yingying never expected Luo Nan to act in a way that seemed like he was opposing her. Zhang Yingying's complaints were lost to the wind. Suddenly, Luo Nan came out of his extremely self-centered state in search of interaction. He raised a question for both Xue Lei and Zhang Yingying. "The production line of the heaven and earth format won't ever stop. In this situation, how does one insert a self-made gear inside for seamless integration?" "The answer is coupling." Luo Nan was like a kid striving to show off. He impatiently announced the answer. A smile burst forth upon his demonic face, which was blotted with tears of blood. It was exceptionally bright and splendid. Xue Lei was stupefied once more. He really didn't understand what Luo Nan was saying, but this was the first time he had seen such a bright and refreshing appearance on Luo Nan's face ever since he had met him. Luo Nan was indeed extremely delighted. He grew all the more fascinated by the marvels of gear the deeper he observed it. This building gear was embedded within the heaven and earth format. It became part of the rumbling and operating production line. The rules were precise, and it fitted seamlessly. There was not a hint of the air of a man-made craftsmanship to it. It seemed to be inherent to heaven and earth. This wasn't possible if the breathing tempo of heaven and earth was not mastered. Because of this, Luo Nan was able to confirm a conjecture he had made earlier. His mother's coupling design was closely related to formatting theory. It was like a sort of application or interpretation. It put to use formatting theory in the plane of reality for the people of the world to see. And this real and tangible achievement belonged to his mother. Formatting theory, gear. Xue Lei finally found the key words in Luo Nan's speech, and he sought to trace the direction of Luo Nan's gaze. Xue Lei was actually able to discern the outline of the jungle and the symbolic building off in the distance with his acuity and limits of vision. But an outline was all there was to it. "Nanster, you can see gear from here." Xue Lei was skeptical of the level of Luo Nan's visual acuity, but he was mostly concerned. For Luo Nan to use his eyes this much in his current state, the burden was far too great. "I can see it. It's truly beautiful." Luo Nan's voice swayed like the wonders he saw in front of him. The marvels contained within gear could not be accessed by purely using the fleshly eyes or the clairvoyance of mental senses. Only when the two modes of vision and mental senses intersected and positioned in a coupling of information could the truth be accessed behind the exterior. Luo Nan looked at the incorporeal power of order. He watched it rotate silently within the void of heaven and earth into a genesis. Luo Nan gazed at all of this with an insatiable thirst for more. It was not enough no matter how much he looked at it. Xue Lei hopped madly from anxiety. He was unable to understand the world within Luo Nan's eyes, but he was able to grasp a few things from the aura radiating from Luo Nan's body. Xue Lei only understood one part. Luo Nan's energy function of the eye's orifice was flourishing too greatly. It was like the wild growth of a plant. Before, it had been a sapling, but then it turned into a towering tree in the blink of an eye. Where did this terrible power come from? Did Luo Nan have enough stamina? Could the structural strength of the human body and its acupoints support it? One mistake, and Luo Nan would be crippled. Right, I need to find the gym master. In life-threatening matters, the first person Xue Lei thought of was his gym master. But right as he was about to exit from the three-way call to call and find the gym master, Luo Nan suddenly drew in a deep breath. His arms pressed against the protective glass, his head hung down, and his eyelids drooped to physically prevent Luo Nan from doing the incomprehensible action of gazing off into the distance. Luo Nan appeared utterly tired. Xue Lei rushed over. "Nanster, you all right? Why don't we first take a breather?" Luo Nan didn't open his eyes. He just laughed. "I may have a bit of a situation going on." "What?" Order can be seen as a gear. The coupling of two orders is the meshing of two gears. If there isn't a precise plan for their integration, if there exists an excessive disparity between the two masses instead, things become very troublesome. Xue Lei was knocked stupid once more, while Zhang Yingying vented angrily, "Forget about him, he's hopeless." In his mind, Luo Nan understood that his friends had different ways of expressing their concern and worries. However, it was difficult for him to continue explaining the situation happening with his body. This was because it involved his deep secrets. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice formed a coupling relationship with the mental senses. In essence, the cultivation with the human body that Luo Nan just started had come in contact with the rather extensive formatting theory system. They could couple, but friction and collisions couldn't be avoided. 10 days of cultivation, with the phenomenon of lightning striking the heart lantern occurring 60 times, already clearly revealed the elements of risk within. Plus, yet another change occurred with his present situation, and the trend wasn't looking too good. It was like a thundercloud high in the sky. The electrically charged particles interweaved. Something big was bound to happen. A strong light suddenly flashed. The external neuron was akin to a dragon roaring with the wind and thunder. It showed itself within the shrine of his brain, and it jolted into a bolt of electricity that smashed upon the heart lantern. This was the 61st time, and it was stronger than any other. This was a direct collision between the external neuron and the eye's orifice structure. Luo Nan long had this foreboding in his heart, but the intensity of this impact was still beyond his expectation. His body suddenly spasmed, and his brawn became muddled. Within his daze, he seemed to hear the sound of his eyes shattering. The impact endured by the cranial nerves passed through the closely interwoven nervous system to transmit to every part of the body. This included muscles, bone, blood, and fascia. They all spasmed by reflex. Luo Nan curled up and crouched down. He reached out his hands to cover his eyes. Uncontrollable tears flowed from his eye sockets. His eyeballs burned hot, and his eyelids twitched wildly. It was utterly painful. He heard Xue Lei's startled cry and Zhang Yingying's panicky shout. The two were both confused. Against all reason, Luo Nan's thoughts became clearer within the pain. He could feel a change in the tactile sensation of his hands covering his eyes. They weren't holding tears of blood, but something more viscous. The intense and powerful pressure had caused great harm to his body. This wasn't much. He knew what was going on. Luo Nan calmed himself down, for he had obtained excellent results. There was probably nothing in the near future that could shake his heart more than him discovering the marvels of gear. Even if his eyes couldn't see material objects, he accurately grasped Xue Lei's extended arm for support. He whispered, "I'm fine. Someone's coming from behind." As soon as he spoke those words, the sound of water exploded, heavily muffled, in the direction of the heavenly ocean lake. The colossal devil ray soared up and smashed down, setting off an enormous wave in the pool. A human figure gracefully leaped up in sync with the devil ray. The person jumped atop the supporting frame structure at the edge of the pool. He wore a black diving suit that showed off the powerful and formidable contours of his body. He sported massive diving goggles on his face, and he had no intention of removing them. This was a member of the investigation team sent by headquarters, Puppeteer. Xue Lei spun around, guarding Luo Nan behind him. Vigilance could be seen within his eyes. Puppeteer didn't say anything. He used his good position from the high ground to look down from above. His pupils behind the diving goggles continued to size up the two people at the edge of the viewing platform. He paid special attention to Luo Nan. He was very interested in Luo Nan's pained, squatting state. Only a few seconds later, two elevators close to the heavenly ocean lake area came one after another. The first to come out was Black Beetle. He had thrown away his sunglasses, and his expression was still a bit green. His eyes pierced over with a chilling gaze. He ignored Xue Lei, only training his gaze on Luo Nan's bent form. Xue Lei held nothing back from this person. He glared fiercely and viciously, but he remained a bit nervous inside. Luo Nan was in a completely terrible state. Xue Lei had to deal with a double front attack simultaneously. With that, having to divert some mental energy in protecting Luo Nan seemed barely possible. Oh, right. There was another elevator. Could it be the enemy's backup? The door of the other elevator opened in the midst of his headache. Xue Lei's mind went blank. He barely adjusted his cognitive direction and identified the person. Tian, Senior Sister Tian. It was none other than Tian Si who had come out of the elevator. This cute and beautiful schoolmate had a deathly white complexion. She walked stiffly, and the upper part of her body was held in a weird posture. Her two hands overlapped each other as they clutched at her own neck. Her grip was quite strong, for her fingers dug deep into her tender skin. The pressure was so great that her mouth gaped slightly and her lips faintly trembled. The scene looked bizarre and absurd. Because of the existence of self-protection mechanisms, a normal person couldn't possibly use this method to strangle themselves to death. However, the situation was different when one was controlled by supernatural powers. Xue Lei ground his teeth in anger when he saw this. You people, you call yourselves members of the society. No one paid any attention to him. Above the pool, Puppeteer opened his mouth, but he spoke to Tian Si. He spoke calmly, without any distinguishing quality, like he was engaging in a normal chat. Meeting again, after a small time apart. Do you have anything to say, beautiful girl? Tian Si's lips trembled, and Xue Lei could even hear her teeth clatter with his nimble eyes and ears. Such an aberrant and cruel technique had been cast upon her body. She could be considered strong for not having a mental breakdown. Shaky words were squeezed out of Tian Si's throat with great difficulty. I took the stairs the whole time. Everyone on the viewing platform stared with stupefaction. Only Luo Nan, who had a knee on the ground from the pain, voiced "ha" in a spiteful laugh, though his laugh was a bit shaky. He didn't look back. He just raised an arm toward her. My bad. That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.